morning, everyone. Standing for the record, I'm going to read it as follows. The Board of Sign Language Interpreters Rules Advisory Committee meeting is convening at 9:36 a.m. on August 27, 2025. This meeting is being held in person and through Zoom video conference and is being recorded. The recording will be posted to the internet for public viewing. I will now call roll. Darcy? Here. Mel? Here. Lori? Here. Caitlin?
She's online, she's just muted.
Caitlin? She can come back around. Amber? Here. Did I say Christy? Here. Christy. Deanna? Nissa?
Here.
Maya? Here. And back to Caitlin. Well, hopefully she's there. Members, when you wish to speak, your first name for the record. Committee members are asked to not use the chat feature during meetings. Health Licensing Office asks individuals attending through Zoom keep their phones muted and cameras off during the entire meeting or until they are given an opportunity to comment during the public and interested parties feedback period. Public comment is limited to matters listed on the meeting agenda or topics relevant to what the committee has statutory authority to regulate. Public members wishing to speak, signing on the roster be available in the room or email Josh Page at josh.page@oha.oregon.gov and provide your first and last name. Everyone is asked to appropriate language manners and protocols when conducting community business. This meeting is now called to order. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the celebration. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick overview of the agenda. So we've called the meeting to order. I did the agenda a little bit different because we never actually got to review the education license, medical license, and legal license, which we had dealt with 2 meetings ago. So I put that one on the top so we can get through it, hopefully. And then I stuck in the statement of need and fiscal impact, so you guys can give me feedback on what that would be for those 3 license types. I have some ideas, but you know, we'll go through it together. So we need to start thinking about those things. We won't have an executive session, but there's a placeholder. And then we will start reviewing what we did the last week. So the renewal requirement, new education, supervisor, we can do this if necessary. So, and then at the end of the meeting, we will look at the rule schedule again and see if we need sleep through 17, if those are maybe we still need to do. Maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe none, kind of have to see how the day goes. We'll revisit that at the end of the meeting. We are officially doing the community engagement September 4th. Spread the word. I've spread it as far as I can, everywhere. So hope people attend and give us feedback. And yes.
Amy, this is Mel. I did hear from a couple of community members that are asking, like, is this Rachel just to hear all our what we think they should be doing, or what do they really want to hear from us? Are they going to be sharing information out? And I said it's just a listening session, so it's us or it's you, Rachel, listening.
Yeah, this is Sammy. They can really tell us whatever they want. We hope that they'll provide us feedback on Senate 950, what they believe it was supposed to be. Maybe they have information from associations, kind of give, or maybe they know states that have done it too, so they'll give us feedback on that. That's kind of the things we're hoping for, but I wouldn't say anything.
And then with the information you do gather, what are you going to do?
We post it online. And then we're going to use it in here to help inform us when we're ready. So, you can come, obviously. to the, you don't have to say anything, just come in and listen. And then you can gather that way. I may do a report, give you a verbal, ask you to look yourselves. So, and then box this up.
My name, so I thought it was one of my boards. What kind of card is it?
But yeah, so hopefully, so feel free to attend. If you want to make comment, make sure you're making it very clear that you're doing as a, individual citizen, not as a RAC member. But really the reason you guys can make the recommendations to the board. So what you say you're gonna say here in this forum, not necessarily in a forum where it's just an individual saying what they want. So you guys actually have a little, obviously, more power than somebody who's just on the phone. Giving us feedback.
Sammy, I'm having a little bit of a tough time hearing. You don't really have to make comments.
Yes, no, you
because
absolutely
we're
do
here
not.
at the RAC. But if we
Yes.
were to make a comment, it's as citizens.
No runs of licensing, just not as a rec.
So this is Heather. Is it correct that this is kind of an opportunity for HLO to gain some background information, identify issues, and then things that would come out of that, you would bring to the RAC if issues are identified, or if there's some background information that they need? The RAC members don't necessarily have to attend.
Yes, that is
It's
correct.
more that this is really just background for HLO, and then HLO will identify the issues and then bring those to the RAC for further development and rules.
Yeah. The board members are attending, maybe one. But you can, but again, we'll make sure that you have all the information in advance and I'll identify all the areas you need. So, can you hear me? Okay now? Okay, then let's get right to it then.
This is Darcy. I'm just wondering, so are the meetings going to be advertised to the deaf community as well? It seems like there's really only been one from like an interpreter page list, but as far as the deaf community goes, it seems like no one's really aware that this is going on. So I wasn't sure either if anything was being sent out specifically to the deaf community. I've just heard that sentiment from some of my other deaf friends as well.
So this is Sammy. I put it out to the places I know. So the organizations, Bridges, whoever it has a license in Oregon, the Deaf Association in Oregon, NAD? OAD. OAD, thank you. But we don't have like a special list of deaf consumers that I can send to. If somebody has that list, I would be thrilled to have it. But I only know what I know, so I emailed the ones that you gave me, the places that you gave me. So, and I asked all of these organizations that listed on their website. I have heard nothing back. But if there is another place I can get this information to, please give it to me and we will make sure they get that information.
This is Christy. I've seen it come out through Bridges advertising, but I haven't seen anything on Hobby.
Yeah, me too. I think OAD is what we're looking at right now.
This is Sammy. I'll reach back out and ask him to do it again, or just, hey, we're here. Yes, please. Okay.
This is not. Thoughts?
Chestnut Lane should have a visual presence there. Someone who can, maybe we can have someone who can contact Chestnut Lane or set up something for the deaf residents there in that building to have some representation during the meeting. ODE, as far as school districts, perhaps they could send out something for deaf students and their own parents who maybe want to be involved because it's going to impact their children and their students. Right, for the interpreter, what was your name? Thank you, Amber. Amber says, good idea.
Sorry. So this is Sammy, and Georgianne is online. I did send her the information. Again, I don't know if she has, I know things are done very strictly. So I don't know if there's like a list of students, like I don't know that kind of stuff, so. Hopefully you guys are giving it to your students and parents.
Ms. Christie, we have a statewide listserv that we can add it to, that we get to teachers and professionals who then can get it out to families as well, so I'll do that.
Oh, it hasn't been done.
Not listserv.
Okay.
I'm
So-
doing Chestnut Lane right now.
And, okay, I'm gonna circle back with you on that.
Amber? Just one, this is Amber speaking. I don't know if it was also posted on the Facebook Oregon Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf Facebook page. Everybody knows, so, but I'll check, it's a good place to be posting as well.
This is Sammy. I contacted their, who I believe is the overseer, and I never got a response, but hopefully, it's not on their website yet, no license. Okay, so hopefully, but I'll reach back out to them again. Okay. Just make a note too.
Hi, this is Georgianne. I don't know if I can speak, but I heard you talking about this. I did send it out to the people in the state that are kind of the leaders in deaf and hard of hearing education. You have two of them here in the room. And so if you would like, I could send that, we can send it out to the PLTs. We could send it out to regional folks to pass around. It's hard because our system is built on the regional system, which is not in the school districts. Sorry if I'm talking too fast. So we can send it out and hope that it gets to the school districts if that's the goal. Just let me know.
This is Christie. Did I? I'm saying, I have my hand up, but now I'm looking at Lori, so that she can confirm. Oh, I gotta do the other arm, my wing is broken.
Which of you wants to speak?
Did I set it up? Did you PLT? The information gathered?
Feel like yes.
Okay, yes, I did. Send out the DHHPLT to then send on.
But I've seen it so many times
I know, I-
now that I'm not sure where I've seen it.
That's why I'm like, this.
Yeah, you're back to work again, right?
This is Heather. I believe that HLO plans to record that session too. So people just have an interest and don't have time on that day to attend, they could always just watch it, as including RAC members. So you don't feel that you need to attend, you can always listen if you want to.
I enjoyed reading from last week. Okay.
Voices. Voices too bad. Okay. Yeah. It's not.
Okay, this is Sammy. We'll go ahead and get started. So I have changed things up a smidge, I'm trying to do lots of things here. making it easy for the board to see, making it easy for us to see, so page numbers. If there's one down here, just ignore it, it's up here at the top. Giant, so I can see it. And then, instead of doing slide comments, if there's a question that we need to answer or information I want you to have, put it in a text box in the middle. If we don't like this, we can change it up to something different, but I'm just trying to. The board has a heavy lift in October to get all of the stuff done. You guys will have done in about 20 meetings, and they have to do it in one. So I'm trying to figure out a way to get them all the information in a nice succinct way, so I'm practicing on you. Yeah. So we looked at this rule 2 meetings ago in July, and basically it's one of the repeal licenses that gets repealed January 1st, 2026. And it's just, mostly what this rule is doing is telling us what settings the educational interpreter who's extended to January 1st of 29 can work. So. And what you guys decided was anybody, the board has determined that a license under this rule may provide sign language interpretation services in any educational setting for students from birth to age 21, including but not limited to students in Oregon Department of Education, early intervention and early childhood special education programs, grades kindergarten through 12, and secondary transition services. By the end of this rule, may only provide services in these designated settings. That's kind of the important piece to that.
This is Lori. When we say the word setting, and I feel a little bit Bill Clinton-ish by just asking this question, but when we say the word setting, does that mean location, setting, or does that mean in the environment in which education is being provided? And I'm asking that because is a nurse's office within a school an educational setting? I assume an IEP meeting is. If DHS comes to the building to interview children, is that considered an educational setting?
It's a place or subject matter.
That's what I'm asking.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah, place or subject.
I have an opinion. I think for me, like PCC, we have the dental clinic. For me, as the coordinator of interpreters, I assume that they must have a medical license to work there because there's medical records involved. So I want to follow that.
This is Christy. I too, that would be a big shift, because currently we say no medical. We can escort a student to the health clinic, we can help them get scheduled, but once they go in, then it is up to the clinic to schedule. And then we only go to DHS, and we warn them, and they still come with no interpreter, and we say, not us. And this is Lori, and we do things differently. We don't have a health clinic. We have the nurse's office, and the people who are there who can communicate with the kids are the interpreters. Just like when DHS comes, the person who knows the language system of that kid the best is the interpreter who works with them every day. I don't love that, but that's the fact of how it works for us.
What you guys, this is Sammy, recommend? Do you recommend it? Is it just limited subject matter based on educational needs, or does it extend out to DHS and all these places that might be in the school place?
I would like to say, this is Lori, I would like to say that setting is a place. But then if our kids go on field trips and they're not in a school, does it make it still an educational setting if they are at a play? Portland. They're still with their school people.
I guess I'm sort of requesting that it be kept kind of broad. And that way, if you choose to do something different, it's still fine to do that, but if we use our interpreters for what we use them for, then that's also.
Is that a big enough answer for you?
So would you say what's there now is vague enough?
Well, that's what caused me to ask in the first place, 'cause I wasn't sure. My inclination is yes. And then people can kind of interpret that as they want. But Mel's gonna disagree.
No. I'm gonna add. If one experience I had a long time ago was in the courts. Something happened with a kid. The school district was very far away, and they used their educational interpreter for a police report for rape, this rape situation. And you're right, the school interpreter knew that kid, their language, everything very well. But during the court proceedings, their qualifications for that kind of interviewing and that work, that kind of interaction kind of goes out the window. And so I'm just adding to what you're saying in terms of, I think what we have in here somewhere, that the interpreter, that interpreter that you use in your setting with a generally licensed interpreter who is able to monitor that interaction, because you're right, they know their language best, but we should have a second set of eyes who are monitoring the interaction, making sure that it's going as intended in case something comes up. So we don't want any barriers to interpreting services, right? That's we want what's best. And what's best is having a team, not one or the other, but having a tandem. That's just what that's what it's.
What would the verbiage look like?
This is Christie, I have a clarifying question. So do you mean that second interpreter is from outside the agency, the school setting, or it's to from?
I'm talking about their license. It's about their license. I think their license and their skill, their qualification, if it's a legal situation, if we need to know, do you have the training to navigate this kind of interview? You are skilled enough for that, you qualify for that. You know, because there's gonna be really intense questioning, so we don't want someone who can't handle that interaction. So I think having them work together, having a team who's qualified for that, who has the right qualifications is what we need, I think.
This is Christie. So one of the reasons that we don't use our interpreters is for that confidentiality. That student is with that interpreter every day, all day potentially. And now you bring in that working interpreter to also interpret a very sensitive situation. And I'm trying to protect the relationship between student and interpreter. And I absolutely acknowledge everything you say that they are often. I do like the idea of having two interpreters, but for my agency, I would probably still say no. Outside.
And I think that's best. I think that's best.
I agree, I think that's best.
And I think for their specific situation, if they don't have anyone else, then keeping it broad, as you stated, and having options is helpful.
This is Sammy. So when you have a situation and you've got the interpreter is working with that student all the time, and then they move to the nurse, who decides, who makes the decision that that sign language interpreter can interpret between the student and the nurse? Does the interpreter make the decision? Does the supervisor make the decision?
I mean, this is Lori, and in my experience, kids don't go anywhere by themselves, so there's always somebody with them. So the teacher of the deaf in our program would typically say, okay, can you go with that kid to the nurse? Or in some situations, if the interpreter and the kid are there together and the kid is hurt, the interpreter would just intuitively walk the nurse.
So a teacher told them.
Could be a teacher, could be independently guided by the. No. I'd say it was helpful.
Okay.
But I like the idea of maybe a sentence of, if the interpreter is a provisional interpreter, a generalist or supervisory interpreter must accompany them for any legal interpretations, something like that. Legal. Medical.
Well, I think it becomes a different setting entirely if an outside person then shows up. Because say the police show up or DHS shows up, then it's their meeting, they're in charge of the meeting, it's no longer an educational setting or educational
Within a
meeting.
school.
Yeah, using the school's physical space, but the event itself is under them. They are now leading it. They are the ones documenting it, reporting it. Versus in your situation with your nurse, you have a nurse's office. That's different than a clinic, which is a separate physical entity. We don't have medical records in the same way. So it's not really medical in that context. They're staff of the school. They're under the educational setting. The staff at the clinic, my understanding, like my kid's high school, the way it works there in Portland, that staff is under OHSU, they are OHSU providers, so it is a medical setting, it's clearly medical. If it's a nurse's situation, they have cuts and they kill like that, then it's different.
So what does that mean?
I have a question I want to add. So this is Nissa. As a person who's been in that situation before, many of times actually, I would prefer that I had the choice of having a neutral, non-biased interpreter come in and interpret that, because I've seen many cases where maybe the personal one-on-one interpreter kind of glosses over it and does not paint the right picture, or does not take the student's side word for word. But I think in those situations, when you have an outside person coming in, that definitely needs to be a neutral, non-biased interpreter. That's just my 2 cents.
This is Sandy, that'd be more like subject matter, but rather than place.
We're gonna take a moment to switch chairs.
This is when DHS comes in and if they know that the child is deaf, do they come with their own interpreter? Does that ever happen? Figured I didn't answer. Okay. Because you could handle this one by a letter from DHS saying it needs to be a different interpreter. And I know I was a foster parent for many years, and I had lots of kids whose parents didn't, English was not their first language. And there were many hearings canceled, Chinese interpreters or whatever it was. Does that happen in this situation? There's not
This
somebody.
This is Lori. Typically in the situations where it has happened with us, it seems to be police will show up or DHS will show up at 2:30 in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right at the end of the day. Need to interview the students about potential child abuse in the home, and they won't let those kids go home on the bus until those conversations have happened. So it does end up being our staff largely that end up doing that. I don't like it. I would much prefer to have somebody from the outside come in, have DHS be mandated to pull in their own interpreters. There's no question about that. I do wonder about the more rural areas and whether that's even a possibility in those settings, but that might be a different conversation.
This is Christie. Copy that, yes, lots of times they show up, even though when we make the report, we say student deaf, you need an interpreter, we put that in big bold everywhere, or when we talk to somebody. And it is very awkward and you feel like you are being a barrier to the process working. Yeah.
There's speaking. You know, those after school hours, is the interpreter paid by DHS or like, where's the funding coming from for that interpreter? That needs to be the school? And so are they still working under the school or are they working at DHS? Their pockets? What's the separation?
Lori, if it's during the work day, they're paid by the school. If it's after the work day, theoretically, it would be DHS, but I'm not saying it would be paid by DHS.
So they're almost, DHS is taking advantage back of the interpreter story though. All right, well, thank you so much for letting all those worms out of that can. So historically, if the school districts sort of had, we've lost over this problem, maybe. DHS is aware that they're supposed to ask for interpreters. DHS has the contracts. They are perfectly capable. So if we pass the license stuff, it's like, you know, hey, sorry, this interpreter doesn't have a license, you gotta bring your own interpreters. I mean, yes, it's going to delay the process until they get their act together and learn how to set up their own interpreters.
Lori, I would be totally fine with that. Saying, sorry, it's the rule, it's law,
Exactly.
can't do it, sorry. Help. Yeah.
Reporting for factual information, it's better to have an outside interpreter anyways. And allow the students to continue their relationship with their educational interpreter.
I wish that, Caitlin was here to be able to talk. Might say, well, I'm in.
Online.
Is she online?
Yeah, but she hasn't been responding.
Oh, she's got her hand up now.
Caitlin? Caitlin's here, yeah.
This is Caitlin speaking. Yes, so rural areas are going to struggle to fill in outside interpreters, freelancers. Most of the interpreters that are in our area are only qualified for K-12. There's a handful of freelance interpreters, but they also mostly have full-time jobs outside of interpreting. There's, I think, maybe being full-time, but she has a family and we're not always able to bring her in if something like that came up.
This is Mel. I think the part of it is best practices, right? If this is a DHS or whatever type of situation, having it fall under that scope is best practice. And the teachers will follow. There are avenues. There's VRI, it's not the best. There's other ways we can get this situated. And I think it's a way to leverage having best practices. And to Nessa's point, having that neutral interpreter and somebody who's trained to do forensic interviews is gonna really help because that DHS report then becomes what's used to either keep somebody in the home or not. So I mean, it's important that, you know, you don't, and think about the interpreter. Like how traumatic it is for the interpreter, like, oh my gosh, I was doing PE and now I did a DHS interview, right? Like that wasn't on my job description. Right?
So we're back to the verbiage.
So I think it really needs to be kept separate. children's backgrounds and their schools is separate from their home life. Growing up, you know, having interpreters, community, knowing a lot about a person, it's kind of heavy. So often deaf people feel like, you know, people know too much about me. So.
This is Caitlin, and I completely agree. It should absolutely be an outside interpreter. I'm just worried about the educating of these systems, so it feels a lot to put on the K-12 interpreter to have to educate, hey, we need to get VRI and we need to get it set up right now as an emergency is happening. So if there's some education that can happen on a systemic level, I would be fully in support of that. Because yes, there should be a neutral party. And it also depends on the student's comfort level, right? Maybe they don't want their everyday interpreter to be interpreting for them in this situation, but maybe they're also the ones that understand their language best. And so having a team with an outside interpreter would be an ideal situation, even if it is VRI.
This is Sam, you could use education services and then tell in the rule what are not education services.
Love that.
It's not my idea, but it's a great one. So what would not be? I feel like I can guess, but wouldn't, you know.
This is Christy, legal, medical, police, DHS, mental health, medicine, school counseling. This is Christy. So there's a couple different kinds of scenarios. So if we have a student who has a check-in, check-out system, they have some dysregulation, but typically if they have a trusted adult they go to in the morning to say, set them up for success and check out, interpreters do. When it comes to being psychological or addressing mental health issues, threat of self-harm, any of those things, we don't do it.
No, right, I think the difference too is different staff. Portland, so for my little kiddo going there.
Speak up a little louder, please.
Their funding is sometimes, like I said, through the Oregon, like, OHSU, or they're actually not a clinic housed in the school, right? Versus your situation, right, which is still as your school counselor. And that feels a little different on the reporting lines. And I just put a side note in that if we are gonna do a change, I mean, and maybe this is for Georgianne, having a communication go out to the Oregon Health Authority and DHS and the Oregon Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services, who schedules that type of meeting. Usually Jeffrey, last name P, lots of letters.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's that guy.
Like,
Like sharing, like we are changing how we move forward based on licensure. And we want to give people enough time to get contracts in place, change contracts, you know, and kind of scaffold this up. Would be nice to communicate out. And then
remember that it's the board who gets to make the final decision. So while these are recommendations, until we know what the board decides, it would be hard for the community to start changing practices in case the board does something different.
So, Sammy, so if we put in that educational services don't mean certain things, then that means there could likely not be an interpreter for these students in these situations.
So it wouldn't be an interpreter provided by schools. Right. Situation. That doesn't mean that there wouldn't be an interpreter, because there's still requirement that an interpreter
So I know what.
This is Christie. Indeed, it would happen. They would come at 2 and we would say, we're not able to interpret, and they would go through all the reasons why we need to do it right now. And we would say, we're not able to, it was indicated in the report. You need an interpreter, it's your legal obligation. Try to throw that out last because you hate to throw that in their face, but it's like, it is your responsibility. And we've had to reschedule and then come back another time, which feels totally yucky and all the things. I guess where I would draw the line is if we are really at a point of a life-threatening situation, then I would give the go-ahead that we're gonna communicate whatever we need to get the child to a safe spot or what have you. But it does happen. Amber?
This is Amber speaking. Christy, you had mentioned not medical settings. So can you kind of define what you mean by that? Because thinking about obviously the nurse's office, but also like audiological services coming in as well. I feel like that's medical, but it's still educational sponsored, funded.
This is Lori, I can answer that to some extent. So audiological services are part of the IEP, for which parents have been given blessing as the interpreter on the IEP. So we don't do audiological evaluations in the school. Your audiologist is not in the school, you're right. So parents actually take their kids to the audiologist in our programs. So they're a part of that. We have outside interpreters for audiology. Do you have outside interpreters?
This is Christy. Sometimes we use our own for exactly that reason, because they are on IEP and so is audiological services.
So I think we're okay with that. And I think given that some districts have outside medical providers like OHSU, that's a gimme, that would be an outside interpreter. In our situation, the nurse's office is actually just like a closet off of the secretary. There's probably no school nurse on a given day when a kid needs a Band-Aid. So I'm not calling that medical if they scratch their knee.
This is Darcy. So we've had a student who breaks their leg or something, has some serious injury. Is the interpreter gonna accompany them to the hospital, or what's the? So is the student themselves with that serious injury, goes to the hospital, stitches, whatever? So is their interpreter going to be accompanying them, or are they just sending the kid off without interpreter services?
That's up to the parents to coordinate and interpret after that.
My understanding is that the interpreter can accompany them to the hospital, but then it's the hospital's responsibility to provide a medically licensed interpreter, or show good faith that they did try and provide a medically licensed interpreter. Their personal interpreter, they have the right to request that their personal interpreter stays with them, but it's the hospital's due diligence to make sure that they have a medical licensed interpreter.
This is Christy. Sadly, last year I had 4 opportunities to go to the hospital with students. And in those cases, we can send interpreters. We sent actually the case manager, the classroom teacher, who is well known to the student. We figured out coverage for the classroom kids that were staying, and then I met teacher, family, student up at the hospital, helped them coordinate, and then we left.
Also the interpreters.
It'll be a long day.
How I was. I think we'll have to come back to this. Christy, this is Tammy. You said school counseling. Now, when I think of school counseling, like high school graduation counseling, is that the same thing that you're saying?
This is Chrissy. No, I'm actually thinking of a student who is needing support around specific issues. And in general, if it's, like I said before, a dysregulated kid who needs to check in, check out,
Behavior stuff.
or if it's, let's look through your transcript and get you ready for college, all of that is fine. It's really those mental health or school-based health that are in these schools. That's what we need to.
Um, would it be adequate to say that if they require mental health services, then that does not fall within the things that you mentioned, requirement? And Lori, is it correct to say that a non-nurse medical setting covers the nurse's office? Or how would you differentiate that?
So Sammy, I wonder when you said, putting the Band-Aid on, so where's the line there? Between Band-Aid and hospital? I mean, I'm sure that.
This is Lori. I guess in my mind, a school nursing scenario where a kid needs a Band-Aid, where he needs an ice pack for his knee, I wouldn't feel the need to call for an external freelance interpreter to come in for a 2-minute conversation with a school nurse or a secretary about, here is your ice pack. I just wouldn't. But that's different if I had an OHSU established clinic in my school or outside of the school, where they're seeing an actual doctor potentially, or a nurse outside of the school nurse. I don't know. I don't, it's hard for me to clearly define.
Is it the funding? Is it that you can differentiate the nurse's office by the education or by?
Chrissy, that's exactly what I was gonna say. I don't actually know who funds school-based health clinics. That's not my area. It's something I gladly don't know. But in this situation, it'd be helpful. I don't know if you do.
But we don't have one.
I'm assuming it's an outside agency.
Sure. I can find out. I mean, I know Forest Grove has been.
No, I think also it's the funding and reporting lines, like if it's a school district and providing a Band-Aid, that's one thing versus OHSU in a private clinic at a high school. Who does it?
OHA.
Oh, sorry. Okay. But also, like, there's a part in licensure that says, at no point are we trying to bar emergency services, right? So like, if it was an appointment and like a teenager was going to do a medical appointment at their school and they provided interpreters, great. That's what's supposed to happen for a prearranged appointment. If it's an emergency day of, nothing in this is supposed to bar interpreting services, right? So we have that.
Yeah.
So if it's a, crisis or in the moment, that's decisions we make.
Yeah.
There's importance.
Look into that a little bit more.
this is Mel, I don't want to get into the weeds on that one, but I know with the courts anyways, if you're contracted with the courts for court ordered anything, you have to provide interpreting services as part of the contract. So when I think about the school districts who receive federal funding and state funding as well, if it's a nonprofit that's partnering with that school, or it's a medical clinic that's partnering with that school, I would imagine, I get curious, like they are also responsible for access. It's part of the agreement of operating in those places typically, but think of like the Sunshine Program or, you know, all those places have to provide access. Title II.
Right, if you're funding village nine. Not my, yeah.
Okay. My high school son went to the clinic, we did not bill our insurance.
Probably bring salt this one today.
But we'll gather more information.
Okay, let's go to the medical. The same scenario, except these guys can reference anywhere they want. In any setting, in the legal is the same thing. So if you go down to page 20,
This is Christie. I really appreciate the big page.
I know.
Me too.
So did I.
But
Yes, yes, me too.
They get lost. Okay, so page 20, and then number 3 is where it determines the settings. The board determines the licensee who this will may provide any setting. Legal and then. Question about what's about the responsibility of the person to be qualified. Maybe deal. Now it'd be the same as page 23. Number 3, any setting legal.
Well,
Um,
for medical interpretation. We have a medical license under OHA already. And that could mean that that interpreter is competent because they already have that training already and that department has already been satisfied. But for legal, there is nothing like that. So that's a concern for me. That one word in there, competence. For medical, you could defend that and say, oh, I'm competent because I've got that, I'm registered with OHA, I'm on the medical interpreter registry, I've had that training. So whatever that looks like, you can say I'm good, but for legal, there's nothing like that. There's nothing to show my competency, there's nothing to prove that, so. Yeah. Go ahead.
So this is Sammy. So in order to get the legal license, you had to hold either the supervisor or generalist and then apply for the legal and attest to having completed 40 hours of education, legal interpreting, or attest to holding one of the following credentials. Qualified interpreter under 4558, court interpreter, RD specialist certification, legal, Read conditional legal interpreting, relay or BEI or interpreters. Where are you reading from? The actual rules today. There are six. Where did you find that? Did you find information? In the real rules that are in place right now.
It's not in this.
It's not in your packet.
Okay.
Oh, okay. That 40-hour training, that's how one can show their competency, at least in the past. That was the goal of that language, but now that's. So could we add that back in to the list, or under the legal section?
Because the same, that like is being repealed. So we wouldn't have any qualifier attached to the one. And anybody can work. Provisional generalist, supervisor in training can work in any setting or supervision appropriate supervision.
For the medical one specifically, currently, HLO, the health licensing, they are requiring how many hours? Is it 60 hours of training? And so for that one, we can have all of the medical interpreters required to follow their 60-hour mandate that's already set. To continue whatever credentialing or whatever continuing education that may be for that renewal for the license. So we can keep that. And then for the general, well, currently, if an interpreter shows maybe they're in training, right? So they're continuing to take their training courses, but they're trying to be ready to interpret. I don't know. I mean, can anyone take? Just trying to figure out how you're going to get that experience as an interpreter before you're actually doing the work in the medical setting. It's a little shaky. It's nerve-wracking for the community.
Just to clarify, if they're in training and then they take the 60 hours, does that mean that they are ready to interpret medical because they completed that qualification, even though they're still technically in training? If that's good enough for medical.
So, under Senate Bill 950, the settings generally go away, except for those extended licenses. And so that competence piece really comes in on the back end of the discipline. And, it seems to me, I may be incorrect, but like before licensure, people would still have to be competent and gain skills before they would go and interpret. And now there will be the ability for, when people are licensed, for someone to complain this person is not competent. And then it would be a matter of, through the disciplinary process, investigation process, determining whether they were competent in that particular scenario. And that person could then bring in information, hey, I am credentialed to, on the registry, or I received this type of training to show that they were competent or that type of thing. But it would no longer be a requirement for licensure that they have a particular type of training unless, you could put to rule that all licensees have to have 30 hours of medical training. All licensees need to have 30 hours of legal training. all licensees have to have 30 hours of education. It wouldn't be setting specific, but it would be a requirement for that particular license. If you wanted that, that could be in there, but it's not by setting.
Kind of like Sammy, what you did with supervisors, saying supervisors have to have this extra layer of training to be a supervisor. So it would be something similar to that.
Also, the interpreters.
We have an hour, 10 minutes. Well,
Is your hand up? Yeah, go ahead.
This is Amber speaking. Has anybody in this room taken the 60-hour medical training course? I'm not sure which ones you guys have taken, but I know that there are a vast difference in different types of the 60-hour requirement. Most of them, from my knowledge, are not sign language based. So that was a concern to me when I was undergoing the 60-hour training myself. To your point, Darcy, that, you know, does it actually prove competence and capability and readiness to interpret in the medical setting? So I just wanted to put that out there that most, from what I have seen, except for one that I can at least validate, actually has sign-specific content, deaf culture content in the training course. But there are many that are out there that are covering content that is extremely basic and more focused on spoken language interpreting in the medical setting. So that's something that a lot of the medical interpreting community has identified, like this is very basic training.
I have a quick question, just so I understand. So if you put that in, that you have to have 60 hours of this and 30 hours of this and that and something else, what if generalist or supervisory interpreters don't want to do any of those settings? But you're gonna mandate it for all of them to have it.
No, typically in the professional and career development of an interpreter, where we have traditionally seen over time is an interpreter finishes their interpreter training program, they're out there learning their trade, they're kind of going in low stakes settings with good support, they're more generalist in practice. And then over the next years, like years 3 to 6, they kind of find their niche and where they do specialize in. And some go to legal, some go to medical, some community-based, some education, post-secondary. It's usually typically around year 5 to 10 that we see interpreters fall into more of the legal category of interpreters, because it does require a higher, the impacts of the interpretation have higher impacts on civil liberties than in some of those other settings. So my first thought was to say generalists, because they have that certain caliber of training, they pass the interpreter assessment, and then so they need those legal training. If I'm remembering right, that provisional now can interpret any words too. Right? In training. And in training. I think to your point, like it is going to be the complaint process, but then like if you're general to supervisory, if we put in they must have medical and legal just training, doesn't mean they have to work. We have to have CEUs anyways to keep our credentials through our certifying bodies. Legal ones are hard to find. They're not easy. Medical, you can find more easily because that's kind of the bread and butter for interpreting. Then you would have something to defend your competency on if there was a complaint. So I don't know. I just feel like the legal safeguards have been lost. The Oregon Judicial Department has, well, you know, they schedule the interpreters for in court.
And then the Oregon Public Defense Fund uses that roster usually to find interpreters for like the training meetings that happen out in the community. But that is a pretty limited list. We need more legal interpreters. We absolutely do not have enough. We don't have enough training. So I can talk myself in and out of all of this, but it's also,
Our break or whatever.
Yeah. We did place for you. Okay, 10-minute break. Okay. This is Sammy. Have we good with the medical and legal license in any setting? That these two licenses that.
Sorry, could you repeat that one more time for me, Darcy?
That these,
Same.
the legal and medical licenses that are being repealed as of January 1st. People who have them now can work until January 1st, 2029 to use any setting. You guys decided that on July 23rd. Because they have the generalist and supervisory license as well. One of the other.
Amber, I just want to clarify, because I haven't been here a whole bunch. So medical and legal are being repealed, got it. So you're saying that those licenses will continue to be valid until 2029 and can be used as such?
They're being extended from January 1st, 2029.
Okay, thank you.
2029.
Yeah. If they have a permanent board. Issued after this. So not the temporary one, but the permanent board license, if they receive that, then yes, those licenses will be extended to January 1st, 2029. If you look at any setting. Good. Okay. So let's talk about statement of need fiscal impact. I'm assuming it will benefit people because they will be paying this renewal fee longer. Sorry, what's the date? Oh, we're on page 25.6.
and if you repeat that, what fiscal impact?
Statement of need fiscal impact on page 25 and starts on 26. These are kind of the questions that we walked through. Some of them I can answer, but if there's something that sticks out at you, that if we, maybe I wouldn't be able to answer it. Like state agencies, obviously HLO would be a state agency, it's going to affect. Possibly could affect Department of Education.
Possibly could impact DHS.
Could impact DHS and how about that one? Yeah.
And police.
And local government would be police.
You mind if I have a second to read over this really quickly?
Oh, fine.
Christie, can I just clarify my understanding, the statement of need and physical impact is one statement applied to each of the licenses or one per license?
Well, but this is Sammy, is a great question, Christie. They conveniently make it so it's all encompassing. So when I write it, I have to like segment it out. It's, yeah, unless you would file a single rule, you will have it all commingled. So, and I don't, I file them all together. So if there's places like education is gonna affect DHS and ODE, then I'll have that separate from. I'll basically call it. So I always like to say members of the public are licensees. That will be affected economically, so won't have to pay a legal fee or license fee. Thank you. We get the small business, small businesses. We don't. That would be affected with this.
This is Christie, I'm just thinking about interpreting agencies. Sure. I Fairly good.
This is Amber. I think I already answered your question. Myself and many of my colleagues have already started increasing their rates, knowing that this is now going to be an extra cost to running their business as an independent contractor. So agencies will be seeing a higher increase in rates from independent contractors. It's already happening. So I don't know how that translates into like fiscal costs, but we're classifying agencies as small businesses. There might be a fiscal impact to that, but it's free market, so.
This is Sammy, so say we get something in the beginning, you said increasing your rates.
So independent contractors have a long list of things that they need to pay for as proprietors. Some of which employees do not have to. So for independent contractors, they can set their own rates rather than an employee who's receiving whatever their boss is giving them. So those rates are based on a number of factors. And the communication that I have heard from our community is that many interpreters who are independent contractors like myself, sole proprietors who are running their own small businesses, we work with multiple agencies. And so we set our own rates and we tell the agency what we're going to charge. Based off of the fact that licensing is now happening, which is an additional cost in order to run this business as an independent contractor, rates will continue to grow to compensate for the additional cost to run the business, if you will.
Okay, this is Sammy, so I understand, these licenses are going away, so you will not be paying.
Licenses in general will be at a cost, correct?
Correct, but
So that's
I
what
think we're
people are
talking
about.
I was asking about the education, legal, and med. Those three are going away, so that must have not be.
It's just for those three?
Those three are repealed. Going away.
Well, I'm asking like with the fiscal impact, what impact to which?
Education, medical, and legal. We haven't got to the other licenses yet.
This is Lori. It sounds like there wouldn't be an impact of these particular licenses, because you're not going to be paying for these particular licenses, just the new ones after 2029.
This is Christie. So is this fiscal statement addressing to now in 2029, and then there's a new fiscal statement? Or
No,
what
we would do rules.
Okay, and I do see that it cannot be amended unless the advisory committee comes back with the new statement, correct?
As long as the advisory committee has met, it can be amended.
So I'm imagining with the independent contractors, the impact for them would be, at least now currently, my understanding is, maybe I'm wrong. Many independent contractors that do either legal or medical or any of the three that we're talking about have increased their rates because of this originally being set up. So now, I don't know, maybe it's $5, $10 more. With this now being repealed, do they then take their rates back down? Because they're not gonna have to pay for the license anymore, we've got rid of these three. Are they gonna set up one rate for all work that they do instead of for specific specialties, having specific rates? So I guess that's what I'm wondering, how it's gonna look different for those independent contractors having planned for this and now we're repealing it, are they going to make a change, unchange it? One rate, maybe go into different settings, et cetera.
For those that worked for an agency, this is Christy, can you answer me this? So CODA's plus. My agency contracts from CODA's plus, we're given a flat fee, that fee doesn't change. So you set your rates and they pay you your rate. Like I guess because I never see a rate change depending on the person. We just have a flat fee. So tell me how that works.
So interpreters are raising their rates right now. There is an interpreter shortage outside of licensure, right? I can send you a really interesting 60-page document from Washington State.
I'd love to have it.
Yeah, so it's happening regardless of licensure or not. And to Christy's point, agencies go into a 1 to 5 year contract with set rates, like at PCC. We have a contract with CODA. It's a locked-in price rate for 5 years at $80 an hour. And the interpreters charge from 40 to 70. So that impacts that small business with their overhead, depending on how the interpreters raise the rates or not. And the agencies are who's doing. So to Amber's point, when I was thinking about the impact on small businesses, it will be that they're locked into a contract with Portland Public Schools. And when interpreters raise their rates, the agencies aren't open to negotiate new contracts with their like their clients until the contract comes up. They're locked in for that year or 5 years or however long that state by contract.
This is crazy. Then they will increase the next time that contract. Yeah.
Yeah, and Stacy, the impact will also be them relying on cheaper interpreters who maybe don't have the skill or competencies, but they cost less, which means the qualifications and experience that are coming with them are not matching because they want to save money because now all the increased rates of the qualified licensed interpreter. So that impacts the deaf community because the quality of the interpreters is going to diminish. I mean, it could be a fiscal impact. Not always, but there could be a literal fiscal impact. This is what I'm saying, and it could be a legal impact. Yes, definitely could be a legal impact.
What'd you say?
I missed what was the answer.
Lori said that's not a
I was responding
fiscal
to that.
impact, but it is like could be a legal consequence. It was Darcy's point was agencies are gonna hire less skilled, cheaper interpreters to make more money, to keep their profit margins high. And that has been historically a problem. Why we wanted licensure in the first place.
Independent contractors, if these other companies already have it locked in for 5 years, does that mean that independent contractor's not gonna go to work for them because they charge more money? So they're still gonna go to work for them if they need them.
Well, this is not possible. If there's an agency that says, no, I can only pay you 50. I have an agency says like, no, I'm gonna pay you 75. No one's gonna go work for 75.
Right. But there's not a whole lot of interpreters out there. So, independent contractors can be at this rate, but if they want work, they'll go work for these other companies.
I didn't sleep on. We're gonna take a moment to search interpreters.
So the point is, like, for now, we have the supervisory license, the generalist license, and then the provisional. So suppose we have a generalist as an interpreting rate, as a contract. I mean, those rates are gonna go down a little bit, not much. The provisional is gonna be looking for jobs, looking for work. They're gonna be out there taking whatever they can. They're gonna be charging lower rates. And the interpreter in training, they might be working for free. So you've got those two groups of people that are kind of at the bottom. Whereas the generalist has, no rules that they have to follow. Which means, some agencies who are not, shall we see, looking for profit, they don't care if they have to like screen out interpreters with their skills. They're a lot more transparent. They're a little more deaf friendly, deaf community friendly, as opposed to just taking the cheaper interpreters. You do have agencies that will provide quality over the fee, but again, all of this is going to affect the deaf community in different ways and in different settings. So it could potentially be very damaging and hurtful to the community. So we have the good interpreter agencies, the ethical ones who are a little more sensitive to the deaf community and culture and knowledge. They have that knowledge. They're a little bit more careful about who they hire and where they place them. Whereas other agencies might just throw in a warm body at a cheaper rate. So those imbalances could potentially be there. So it's a politics thing. It's happening in Oregon, it's happening in Washington, especially in like rural areas where there aren't as many interpreters. Money is an issue as well. So, yeah. Go ahead.
I would agree with everything you just said. And also, I think we're supposed to be focusing on the 3 licenses that are expiring 2029, not the provisional, the general, and the supervisory, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just trying to
But we will get there.
Yeah. Get there. And totally agree.
Sort of them to give us little chunks instead of giant chunks. But we can change it up next time. Okay, the other thing about fiscal impact statements is you can use hypotheticals. Like a document, it just is. So even if you guys said, well, this could happen, then I can say this could be a situation of that. So I can use those types of examples, hypotheticals, and there might even be identify one person groups impacted by the rule. Subject to the rule. So there's another piece to identify persons and racial groups that are impacted by the rule. So this would be probably deaf people. This is where I did fall into the things. Absolutely. There's definitely. Okay, do that. And we can revisit these as well. Like I can type some stuff up and then we can revisit it. If I got it wrong, you guys tell me. You can add to it, the board will add to it. And possibly people who come in and speak at the, this would be something really good for the information gathering sessions, information on this type of stuff would be great. Things that we just may not know. Okay. Oh, public and interested parties feedback, the first one. Okay. We have 2 on the agenda. One begin and one's like kind of right in the middle. So I'm just gonna call it in. At this time, the Board of Sign Language Interpreters Rule Advisory Committee will hear public and interested parties feedback. Public comment is limited to matters listed on the meeting agenda or topics relevant to what this committee is statutory authority to regulate. Comments will be limited to 10 minutes and will not be allowed if they are disruptive to the committee's conduct of its business. If you are called on to comment, HLO staff will request the public member to unmute themselves. The chairperson and HLO reserve the right to end a person's comment early if the comment does not pertain to matters listed on the meeting agenda or topics relevant to what the committee has statutory authority to regulate. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? If so, please raise your hand by using the Zoom feature.
No emails or anything.
Okay, we'll just know, we'll do this again at the end of the meeting. You want to do that? And then we have no executive session. So now we move on to the renewal rule, which we worked on at the last meeting. It's on page 32, and then 33, goes to 35. Some of these are just notes, like the first gray box, subsection 2 may need to be revised. One is sign language and training is, like, maybe you guys decide it's going to be annually to renew. It has a case by case basis renewal, so that one could change. It may change the way this is worded. I mean, that's. So now, this is for all the license types. These are what you have to do. If we add in sign language interpreters, or in training sign language interpreters, say the board decides they're going to renew every year, then that would change this, because these guys are 3 years. So it's just a consideration that will have to be. Really all I can say. So a couple things on page 33. This is kind of standard.
Is that is that on the new licenses, if we change the language, say that again, what you were saying about the gray box?
This gray box will need to be considered once the RAC and the board decide the renewal cycle for in-training licenses. This will be after all. Okay, some of this is standard boilerplate language. Some of it is not. So under 3, we tried to clarify some things, but I'm not sure we made it clearer. So I would like you guys to read it. I mean, it's clear to me, but I need somebody who's not been living in this document to read it. So on page 33, number 3, try to explain. To avoid late fees, license renewal must be made when the license is active and prior to the license entering inactive status. A license issued or renewed after January 1st, 2026 is active until 11:59 p.m. on the last day of the month, 3 years from the date of issuance or renewal of the license. For calculating a 3-year period, the license renewal date is the same month and day that the license was originally issued. To renew the license, holder must submit application, do CEs, pay fees. Yes.
This is Lori, and just for clarity, you're only talking about provisional, general, supervisory. We're finished with the other ones because they are okay if they're inactive or
Yep. Thank you. These are the actions of that. We're only renewing those 3 right now. Okay, it's all about, it's actually listed on page 34, right at the top.
Sounds clear to me.
Okay.
I'm gonna just speak. How about this? A license must be renewed when it is active.
Wow.
While it is active. A license issued or renewed after January 1st is active until, I like the for calculating the 3. And then to avoid late fees, apply 2 weeks at a time.
I mean, you could come right over the counter and do it.
Yeah.
It's the same day.
You can renew up to 45 days prior to expiration date. But
Okay,
there's no grace period after the last day of the month.
This is Lori. So if someone renews 45 days from the expiration of their license, will the new license take effect as soon as it's been processed or at the end of those 45 days?
As soon as it's been processed.
Yeah, so they actually lose time by doing it.
No, because your license is still good till the end of the month. And then the new license reflects the end of the month.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it doesn't change. It doesn't change. It's just allowing you to do it so you don't forget you can do it. Yeah.
That's correct. I'm asking because my administrative license, I renewed very early with TSBC. And they started it in effect when I did that, so I got screwed out of 4 months of license.
Yeah.
no, we don't do today. Once you're in, that's your day.
Okay.
Locked in. One thing I wanted to point out, since there were people who weren't at the meeting or were on Zoom and may not have been following, I'm just gonna walk through this. So all the licenses will be renewed. I've read through the explanation. And they're all gonna attest to continuing education. Your notes are on the top of page 34, and there's another row we're gonna go through. One thing the board wanted, or the RAC wanted, is proof of having no current disciplinary action posted by the officer board. And I took it out because problematic. What if they hold another license through, what if they're a hairdresser? And so, a hairdresser or a tattoo artist, or therapist. So there's just a lot of implications when you add something like this into a rule. Right, took it out.
I don't understand. Can you explain that again for me?
Yeah, so on page 34, little c, says, to renew, you must show proof of having no current disciplinary action imposed by the office or board. And I removed it because that type of language can get a sticky situation where somebody could have a different license from another profession. I mean, we've got 53 different professions in each of them. So pick one that you might have, or either in the middle of, signing an order, I don't know. Or in the find your letter status.
This is Lori, and also, how are you proving a negative?
That's what I was gonna say. That's exactly what I was gonna
Prove that you're not a convict.
Yeah, and this is Tina. We're already gonna know if you're
Right.
licensed because it's gonna be flagged. So we already know you're not gonna, you'll go back to regulatory if you have some kind of disciplinary issue. And also it's going to ask you these questions on the renewal. All of our boards have questions that you have to answer when you renew, so.
I didn't want anyone to be shocked when I deleted it.
This is Darcy. I'm curious, like suppose like, for example, a person has an interpreter, gets a complaint filed. The other person is filing a complaint against them. So that person can't renew until the dispute is resolved, or how does a situation like that work? I mean, not opening another can of worms, but, so how does that kind of dispute get resolved?
So this is Heather. Darcy, that's a great example of why this type of language is problematic. Once a complaint comes in, if an investigation is opened, then the regulatory department of HLO investigates that. If the person isn't disciplined, they're just under investigation, then that might, this type of language, you know, it's questionable. Is the person, you know, are they in good standing or not? To be disciplined, there needs to be a final order in place saying what the person did wrong, what rules they violated, and what the discipline is gonna look like. And sometimes that discipline could be, they need to take certain classes. And so again, that would be problematic with this type of language, because if the person, you know, they're taking their classes, they're doing what they're supposed to do, they're fulfilling that final order, would they not be able to renew even though they're following the final order? So that type of language is better handled through the disciplinary process, through final orders or settlement agreements. Not in certain times, a person, when in the disciplinary process, would not be able to renew. That's on the discipline side, not in the renewal side of the license.
I'm gonna pause to switch.
Another question, this comes up like when we have it's just temporary license as an example, or training license, so you can only renew twice, but can reapply. So can a provisional license reapply for, if they went through there for 3 years and then there 2 renewals, so 9 years after January 1st? Can they reapply if they didn't complete all their training, get the generalist license? Are they done? That makes
I
sense?
assume they were done.
Well, that's my question, are they? To you guys, done?
Why would we give them more than 2 renewals if that's what the law said?
No, reapply.
Well,
Reapply is start all over.
Application and renewal are different.
It can be no.
yeah, I get it, but it's paperwork, right?
Yes. Ish. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. Some of our boards say environmental health.
Oh, it's a horrible example.
Okay, well, let's do this. You have your renewals, but you haven't completed your training. There's individuals, other boards that have to reapply and they start all over. We're trying to get away from that because if, for example, this will be 9 years for a provisional, do you want them to be able to reapply and start all over, or do you want it to be done?
I don't think they necessarily have to start.
Or just, yeah, reapply and keep on going, yeah. For 2 more renewals after they reapply. This is Christie. Say it out loud again.
So a person who has had the 2 renewals,
Provisional, right?
provision, and they're gonna do it the last time. But they haven't finished training from license renewal 2 to license.
At the end of license renewal. 2. Yeah.
So if they haven't finished the training in other situations, it's been that they go back to the beginning and have another 9 years?
Okay, go ahead, Heather.
So this is Heather. Perhaps an example is a person has a provisional license and during their time, they renew on time, they have their license for that 9 years. And they are interpreting within their provisional license. Perhaps that person has a life event, whether a pregnancy or a death in the family or something where they are not able to gain all of the training that would allow them to apply for the next level of licensure. But they're still interpreting and they're still in good standing. So at the end of those 2 renewals of provisional license, that's done for that license. Can that person then apply for a whole new provisional license B, so that they could either continue just within the provisional realm or gain more training to become a generalist, or not?
This is Lori, and I think the intent of Senate Bill 950 was you're consistently progressing to get to the point of being a generalist after you've had those 2 renewals and provisional. So my vote would be no to starting the process over and being provisional again. Maybe there's a path that somebody who's had a traumatic event in the family, somebody who's been dealing with cancer for 4 years, of the 6 that they have renewals for, can, be somebody to the board, HLO. But as a general statement, my verdict would be no, because we want people to have gotten better to the generalist category.
Again, I don't want to see gatekeeping happening, but I also want to make sure that we're continuing to level up interpreters, right? But there is something that happens there, like there was 9 years that didn't transpire. So I think maybe if we can write in something along the lines of a petition to the board to, have the opportunity to apply for a provisional license for a 4th time. And that's something that the board can deal with, that they can fill out a form of some kind to petition for a 4th renewal. It goes up to 3 renewals, right? Or not 3 renewals, 3 times that you have it, so that's the 4th time that you would have it. So yeah, the 3rd renewal.
This is Darcy. I just wanted to clarify, because I'm thinking currently, with, the new, 950, there's the 3-year period for provisional, and that continues for three terms of 3 years. Whereas with the old law, it was 1 year. So how is that going to impact the people who currently are working under a 1-year renewal? Are they gonna do the 2nd and the 3rd term or renewal period up to 3 years, or what? How is that going to translate to this new implementation of renewal schedule? Is their name gonna be on the list? Like, because they had a 1-year renewal period, but now it's translating to 3 years. I'm just putting that out there. How is that translating into from a 1 year to a 3 year? Are they still gonna get their 3 years if they're currently operating as a 1 year? Opposed to the person who's got the 9-year total renewal ability for a provisional holder? Because I'm provisional right now and I'm on a yearly renewal status, so how is that gonna impact that group of people? You issued your license.
So if you were issued it in 2025, then, you're gonna be active until 2/1/2026. Then in 2026, when you renew, you start your 3 years.
So we're phasing.
So are you saying the people who are in this group with me, currently on a 1-year renewal status, are going to transfer and start a new 3 set of 3-year cycles? For an additional 9 years, or what's the difference there? It's complicated, so I just want to clarify this because it seems like several people have asked me and I'm like, good question.
So if you were issued the license in 2025, when you go, let's choose February 1st, 2025, you will renew that. You renew it in 2026. 26 will go till 29. And then you'll have,
It'll go to,
So in
it
total.
will then follow the new law coming into effect.
But there'll be two.
and then your second renewal will be 3 years. So you go till 3032. And then you're done.
So in my understanding, for your situation, Darcy, you've got the first year of a renewal. You'll renew a second time for 3 years and a third time for a total of 7 years. The people who had first apply in 2026, they will get a total of 9 years. So it's kind of too bad for you and all the other ones who had their license previously.
What about the folks who did already do their 3 years of renewing? They can't reapply for provisionals. What we're saying right now is that we're not allowing them to reapply for provisionals, so they lose out on that opportunity to do the total 9 years.
Does that make sense, Sandy?
Well, unfortunately, that's what Senate Bill 950 did. It didn't say all of you who already hold a license are gonna get additional 3 years. It didn't do that. So we can kind of only do what it gives us power to do.
This is Lori. I think I've misunderstood up until now, but the provisional license you get, and you get 3 years. You renew, that's 3 years. And now the second renewal is a third
It depends on
3
what you're.
years, so we're actually saying 9 years for that.
Yeah.
I was thinking 6 before now,
When
but
you're getting, when you got the license. You got it in 2024, that's when you look different.
Right. But if you get it in 2026,
You're
you're gonna get 9 years. Okay. I think that's not.
Right, but to Darcy's point though, is that people who have the provisional now.
Right.
You're only gonna get 1 year and then 3 years and then 3 years.
It was
Compared
only
to the
5
3
years.
years for the people who are gonna apply for next year. So now the people who are eager beavers ready to go now, they're getting cut opportunities.
I get it.
Going down to 7 years.
Yeah.
Get it. And some will even be 5 years. Like Christine.
Nobody would be fine.
If you paid in 2024,
No. January 1st, you get 2 full 3-year renewals. It's like you get to start your renewal clock over again. So you get 2 full renewals. No, I do the dance.
Going back to Lori's comment, whether they should have the opportunity, I do feel like it sets up a loophole that once people figure it out, will potentially access that. And the intent, I believe, is it's accurate, it's to elevate people's skill and keep them going, give them incentive. So I would say after 9 years, all done. But I do like the idea of some sort of, yeah. Yeah.
Great. Good, no? They agree that 9 years is plenty, it's good enough. And RID has a pathway established for if life happens and something goes awry, you get one opportunity to try it. And that process that you apply to do that through RID is very strict. You have to have an illness, something extenuating. You know, pregnancy, usually at some point, it's expected now because you know it's happening. So it doesn't just happen and then all of a sudden. Typically. But, yeah. One concern for me, something that makes me feel a little apprehensive is who decides when we approve that petition or not? Like, is it the board? Because honestly, who's sitting on the board? Are those folks that I trust? Are they trained and aware in what it looks like for us to become interpreters? Like, that's a lot of power for them to have and to make that decision.
You're talking about who decides for the appeal process? Oh,
Yeah.
So this is Sammy. I'm unaware of any authority to have an appeal process. However, I made a note. In my 30 years, I have not seen that. Have you seen that? Yeah, I don't think, maybe some, but I don't think that that would be a thing. Not even an HLO. But maybe.
I don't think, for me, I mean an appeal per se, but just a request for an extension, perhaps is a better way to phrase it. A one-time life event that allows you to request an
That's the same
extension
thing.
on the license once in a lifetime.
I think it's
At that point, what would we do with this, with a person in that position? Because, you know, we're all human, life happens. You have to take care of your dying father, should have the ability to do that, right? So we're not talking about every case of people who are being lazy and not doing the professional development that they need to do. We're talking about life events happening that, like you said, are unexpected, uncontrolled events. So what would be the course of action? An appeal, petition, et cetera, is not an option on the table. Do they just wait until they get certified or get an EIPA score of 3.5 or higher to apply for a generalist license? Would that be the only next step? Is that what you're insinuating?
Yeah, that's a 3.7, slightly on the side.
This is Tina. One thing to keep in mind while you're having this conversation, and kind of just dawned on me, but provisional right now is only 5 years. And you're adding 4 more years on that provisional too, so just keep that in mind. Currently, you can only renew how many times on professional? Twice, so 2 times. 5 times, so 6. So you're adding several more years
You are
to
adding
that.
to what it's-
Yes.
this is Lori. I'm just thinking comparatively to teacher licenses. Teacher's licenses are good for 5 years now. And as far as I know, there's no appeal process if you shouldn't have fulfilled your obligations to renew that license. Yeah.
One thing that I was thinking is for us as interpreters, we don't really have control over is testing results and when you get that back, the timeline. If I'm following everything to the T, I'm on track, and I, paid to take my test, but now I'm waiting to get the results and it's taking more time than expected, I don't get them in time, I can't officially reapply for the next thing, so then does that mean I can't work because they haven't told me yet if I've actually passed and gotten certified? So for provisional, it's pre-certified, so if I'm waiting to get approval that I did pass my certification exams, how do I do that if I can't?
For me, that's fine. Also, I think if your license expires, then you just pay like to renew it, right? No? Yeah, the late fee. If your license died because you didn't pay for it and have the test or whatever by the next time you need it, you could have it lapse. You could have it lapse. And then just pay.
But you're not supposed to work if it's lapsed, so that means that person cannot work, they need to have a license that's active to work, period.
We know that the tests take a long time, right? So people just need to do their research and plan. My opinion, don't make it less. Yeah, that's right. Do it a year complete, right? Yeah.
Of our other boards, we encourage them to start taking their exam way ahead, like, because because some of them are very hard to pass, so they start taking them while they're in the training process and not wait until they're ready to lose their.
You need to take it again, so
Yeah.
really.
It's actually a couple of years ahead of your end of your second renewal or your third.
7 years should be sufficient time, 9 years should be sufficient time to plan for it.
So I'm gonna say it cannot reapply. We'll even read on.
Finally. This, this is the only board out of all of our boards that have that long of a training period. Most of them are 2-year training periods, so.
Well, remember, this is not the training license. This is.
Professional, this professional is working towards, so.
Comparing provisional to professional, this is the longest.
Yes.
Understandably so, we have certifying bodies that are not always great, so that makes perfect sense to me.
See? Let me verify something on page 35. It says provisional, it's number 8. Provisional license can be renewed 2 times or 3 times. I'm getting confused because we were saying 3 and doing 3 times 3 gets us the 9, but it can be renewed up to 2
That's what I
times.
was explaining a minute ago that I just understood. First time you get the license, 3 years. First renewal, 3 years. Second renewal, 3 years.
All right, got it.
Yes.
So I was confused.
Okay, I think we're in a good spot to keep. And we'll go into training education. So we're gonna take a 15-minute break to get lunch organized. 15? We're working lunch. Okay, so I'm gonna say this again. We're going to end the meeting at 2 today. So we're gonna have public comment about 1:45. In case there's public that needed to know that. Okay, so moving right along to the,
We want to make sure this and Caitlin are there.
yes. Are they there?
If they're online, I just want to make sure that they're there.
Oh.
Nissa and Caitlin, are you guys there?
Yes.
We have
Okay. So if we go to page 38, I really do like my big numbers, I'm not gonna lie. That's really good. It's good. Although, you know, when you make a PDF, so the header, but if you add something in, it doesn't.
Oh, see, that's.
So it's like, I gotta wait till there. Okay, so, some of the continuing education information, some of the boilerplate stuff is changing. So we will look at this again, but I wanted to focus on page 38 and top of page midway through page 39, which is what you guys came up with for the CE hours. For the supervisory license, there's two pathways. One have an active credential. Hold on, have a credential. Still there. And the other was have 60 hours of continuing education. And 20 of it had to be in supervising sign language interpreters and had to be in ethics and sign language interpreting. Now, all of this is up for interpretation, this is what I heard, and I can be wrong. So we're clear. So you start there. I do want to add that I'm not sure what is supposed to be, because active credential, that's not really a thing. So what do we put there? How do we know that your credential is state and in the list? So, actually is more clear. So on page 38, where it says an active credential under OAR 816, if you go to page 44, and there's a list of credentials. At the top of page 49, that's the list of credentials. So on page 38, one little a, big A, that list of credentials is here on page 49. Yeah.
This is Darcy, so A at AA.
Yep, AA. Matches page, that's the list of credentials. It looks like it's called a maintenance. It's what RID calls. The credential maintain. Say it again, sorry. So we had to remove active credential. Active has to go, but I kept credential. But how do we know that credential is up to date? Is it an inactive thing, situation? Yeah.
So, this is Mel, on the RID or the, I think BEI is the same, you get something that says the dates, and then it says active or not active. So you do, I sent a screenshot that says this is my credential, like I've paid my fees this date, so I am active. It's also kind of like your, registry, you can go into RID and look. And if the person is listed there, another one.
So I guess I can get behind the RID that, and I see in the CDI, but I don't know that any of the other ones are active and inactive.
This is Mel. It's not that the test, those are tests that you listed on 49 and 50.
Why are they under credential?
So how RID, and I can only really speak to that.
Maybe it's a certificate.
right? It's showing that I have passed an exam in my interpreting. And then for me, I have to keep my membership up by paying fees. And then I have to also keep my continuing education current. Sure, there's another fee I pay.
Right, and that's for your RID and MIC.
No, any of those. So I have 7 of those credentials that are listed on that page. And I pay for them, each of them. I pay extra for my legal. So I pay to keep my membership and my credential active every 4 years. And so at one point, when we talked about the different pathways, we said if you had taken an exam that had assessed your interpreting ability and skills, but you no longer have paid that money for whatever life circumstances, we at least know that at some point in time, you passed an exam that said you had the skills pass. So we have differentiated the assessment versus an active credential. But my active credential, I call my certification. That's the language we use.
Well, I think certification and credential are the same, but exam is not.
Right, we don't often reference the exam because most places want to know that you're current, continuing up with your CEU, continuing with all of that. So like people in the field who passed the test 30 years ago, but then let it lapse, but they were still working because I have this and that PCC, let's say. I have an interpreter who's worked for an institution for 30 years. We don't get paid more for keeping up that credential. They showed when they were hired that they had the skills and they continued working. So our HR department doesn't look for that. So there's a group of people out there that passed an exam many years ago, have worked for a school district or wherever, a place of food. And because they don't want to spend the $500 every couple of years, they just let it lapse. Not recommended.
I think that we're saying the same. Okay. So let me make sure I understand. So if I'm going to use my RID reverse skills certificate. Am I going to do have to keep that active every year?
To show up in the RID registry as an active interpreter, you've had to keep your CEUs and pay your dues.
You got that. But if I'm really, okay. Okay, so I'm really using my NIC.
NIC means you took the test within the last 5 years. The RC, whatever reverse skills means you took it 35 years. They're all different exams.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
assess
no, I
what
get
you're
that.
learning, but they're not.
And some are, what do they call it?
Dinosaurs.
No,
Oh, sunsetted.
sunsetted, yeah.
Yeah.
420, yeah. That was one of those.
So those, this is Christie, those that hold PIPA, the assumption is that if they've taken it and they have a passing score, then they're current forevermore. But there's no place that you would go and look for the IPA. Like that.
Right. So this is only, what's the BEI and the DNRI.
You did again.
Oh, I'll run it back up the chain for active credential and see what happens. But let's say it is active credential and then obtain 10 hours of continuing education specific to topics related to supervising sign language interpreters in 3-year renewal cycle. Is that accurate? That your experience needs to be in supervising sign language interpreters.
Amanda's not here.
So, okay, I went back and read the transcript and that's what it seemed like, but I didn't.
Could you say that one more time?
Yeah, so, first pathway is you have hold one of the credentials on page 39 and have 10 hours of continuing education specific to topics related to supervising sign language interpreters.
No, I have 60 hours of CEUs required, right?
That's pathway 2. Pathway 1 says you have the credential and then 10 hours.
Where's that coming from? Where's that coming from?
Page
38.
38. Page 38. CE's first pathway says you have the credential and then you have to have the different credentials. And the second pathway should have 60 hours. 20 of them are gonna be in supervising centers. Again, I could have screwed up.
This is Christie. I have, heard some community feedback that the 60 hours, 20 of which are supervisory related. There's concern about accessing professional development. Is it out there? And last time you guys said that, so it would be helpful if we communicated what the opportunities are over time. So we can access.
This is Mel. The model of supervision that's predominantly looked to and referred to in the United States is through Robin Lee, and it's the SLI. They have supervision, and it's a whole training, lots of trainings, lots of recorded trainings. Yeah, and there's books, book ones, and in runs, yeah. So I'm trying to look back, see, I mean, under the supervision discussion we had last time.
There was also discussion of the supervisor. That's similar, but not the same. That's interpreters guys.
This is Amber. Is pathway 2 the alternative pathway?
I don't know.
Are you, I don't know what we have, is it?
Pathway 2 credentials, submit proof of having obtained one of the following current or previously available credentials.
You guys want to not do CEs and go to the supervisory lessons? Easier? Why?
I'm more lost. We're going back and forth here. Could we get back to what we were, or maybe I'm on the wrong topic here, but if I'm following correctly, pathway for supervisory, the first one has a list and it requires an active credential. I've noticed that A and B says 10 hours of supervision, continuing 10 hours of CEs for related to supervision, and then under that, on pathway 2, it says 20, oh wait. Yeah. 20 hours of supervision related education. So which of these is it? Is it 10 or is it 20? It seems like it's not 20 page cut. Yeah.
This is Sammy. So basically what's happening is pathway 1 says, I'm keeping my credential current, and with my credential, I'm having to do all of these other things. So whatever that, I think it's 60 hours, I believe. And then the RAC wanted to have an extra 10 hours and just have a supervised assignment interpreters. And then that's if somebody held an active credential. People don't have to have that active credential, they can let that go. And so people who will let that go will be pathway B.
Okay. Also, I remember from the past meeting. At first, if you were under RID or the VEI, currently they require to get CEs. And if you meet their CE requirements, then you will meet this. For people whose credentials have lapsed, are not required to take excuse now because it's no more. So if we're adding this in here, clarifying, you must have 60 hours so that it's equal. So for supervisory, like really, the reason right now is there's really no trainings, like we're trying to add this training for the reason of providing supervision to let other interpreters come along. Like you can't just assume that an experienced interpreter can be a mentor or coach. They need training too to provide that service. So that's the reason of the 60 hours and the specific hours in supervision, so that they can bring those interpreters on.
This is Amber. I'm having a hard time understanding why there is the 10 and 20 hours difference.
Where are you seeing 20?
As Darcy was mentioning before, for the 21 credential, you must have the credential that says OAR, okay? Do all that, and that means you're probably already certified, most people, and you're completing continuing education units for the RID. Cool. On top of that, since this is a supervisory license, you do 10 hours specifically for supervising SLI, mentorship, etc. So I'm a little confused because the pathway 2 on big B, little I, states it has to have 20 hours for supervising SLI and having training regarding supervising SLI. And the reason why I don't understand that is because we have 60 hours of continuing education that to me feels like it's equating to what you would potentially be missing when you're not already certified in the traditional pathway 1. So it seems kind of like, it almost seems like a penalization against people who are not having RID certification to now have an additional 10 hours required of them on training for supervising, in training and professionally licensed interpreters.
I think our plan was, what was that, 20 hours?
Okay. It doesn't say
So
that.
they were both supposed to be at 20 hours. My guess is that both of them, were going to be 24, because pathway 2 have no formal training associated with it or other education, you could afford to have more up there. Because you're providing supervision and it's going to look different. You've leveled up. And what you might have missed last time too is that as a supervisor myself, I can charge my supervisees more. And I can show, hey, I've got this knowledge, I have specialized training in mentoring and supervising, and I can pass that on to my clients, and I can show I'm I am credentialed in this specific field, and I have a specialty here. And that's fine to, I understand with the supervisor license, I just don't understand why those are different. It sounds like if we're penalizing pathway B because they're required to have an additional 10 hours of specified supervisory training as opposed to pathway 1. Also, I think they should both be 20. And says I do think they should be the same as well. I also think they should both be 20 hours. Which says I'm agreeing with your comments, Amber. And I'm thinking if the first one in pathway 1 was 10 hours and pathway 2 was 20, maybe we could actually do a little switch here. And under I, double I for number 2, the first little I could be 20 hours of continuing education, specifically in the realm of supervising. But the 20, we could change it to 10 hours, and then for little I, it could say continuing education related to interpreting 20 hours. So actually flip those two. And then the other, so that would be more fair, between those two pathways. Be 10, 20, and
Or I make any
And-
changes I want, I'm gonna verify everything that's happening here. Okay, so keep going, but I wanna verify.
so I thought Amber's point was that they should be the same required hours of supervising. C is 20 for both pathways. Because in 4 years, 4-year cycle, CEUs that you're getting required to have 80 hours total in 4-year period, right? Yeah, 80 hours. So 20 is actually a very small percentage of that total of 80 hours. You can spread it out as you take courses. So if you wanted to do the same, then 20 hours for pathway B and A. Well, I was confused when you said you wanted to switch the 10 to the 20 hours
Switch
between.
the 10. The numbers in I and II as follows.
They would be the same as, so they could be 10 and 10 or 20, 20, whichever way you wanted it, but that would be my recommendation, to just swap these categories under I and II. Which would be 10 and then 20 and then 20, or no, you'd have to have 10 and then 10. Maybe, also separate them out. Yeah, keep them separate categories, but point being, supervisors are taking that training related to supervision. And no matter which pathway you do, they are the same amount of required supervisory hours. That's the point, that they should be the same. Pathways A and B should have the same amount of required supervisory coursework. So I think if we make that little switch, that would solve the problem.
Right. 10 hours supervising, 20 hours.
For both. 10 for both, and then I would say, yeah, I would say 10 if you're super related to supervision specifically. I would say 10 and 10. But making this change and then little II for ethics, that would be 20 hours maybe?
Oh, I see. Okay. So I'm leaving pathway 1 alone, 10 hours of CEU for supervising.
10, and then pathway 2.
Even though I had heard 20 at one point,
Yes.
we're going to 10. I want to make it very clear.
Go ahead, Amber.
There's a lot of things
That was
happening.
Amber, that's Amber. I'm recommending that we keep pathway 1 as it is. And then under pathway 2, we do 20 hours of, changing from 20 hours to 10 for supervisory related hours. And then under II hours, for ethics of- and then the third, July would be the same, so it all adds up to the same amount of 60. So 10, 20, and then, yeah. That's what it would be. So I'm gonna challenge back, we're gonna spar a little bit here. Do you remember a while ago, in Oregon, there was a training called, the
Master Mentor Program.
Master Mentor Program. And their curriculum was a 60-hour curriculum. It's a lot. And the interpreters, they provided really in-depth mentoring for interpreters, and you provided to have them become certified. And, you know, it was really about how to support new interpreters. So going from 20, so that's why I'm thinking 20 hours. Darcy says, no, it's up to everyone.
And the ethics 22.
Because under III, the 30 hours, I think, could, for a general category, can change to 20. And also, well, make 20 hours for each category then. Darcy says, what do you all think? Chime in here. So as for me, I took that master mentor training because
Another workshop.
another workshops because I wanted to, provide that for new interpreters who are very awkward and growing, and then it just really depends on. It is just nice to have more specific training. Because I want to provide that to these interpreters so that they can become certified.
I think that has, this is Amber, I think that has a lot of value to what you're saying, and when I think about the typical supervisory interpreter and how much they're actually in their work life performing supervisory services of supervising a colleague who is a professionally licensed interpreter. By the ratio of how much they're just doing their job as a practitioner. And I wonder, like devil's advocate here, I wonder if 30 hours of continuing education for general professional studies would be more beneficial for the practitioner themselves. And then if they're doing that 10, let's say, of training to be a mentor, they want to take more, they can. But they have that basic level of here is 10 hours. Because I don't know, like, I'm just thinking about what the actual work life, like, if we're looking at like a pie chart or something, like how much time are you actually spending on supervisory? I'm not discounting the need for like training for that. I'm not discounting that at all. I'm just thinking of if you're motivated to be mentoring like way more than the typical person, then maybe you're gonna be taking more of those opportunities and you have that right to do so, but mandating it. Does that make sense? Am I making any sense? No.
That's for the interpreters. Fine, I'll start over. It can be both perspectives. So my point, if you remember from last session, is that it's similar to like the counseling field. Say I provide supervision for counselors that are coming up in the field. I can charge each of them $150, $200 for an hour session with me. So that means I'm a really skilled supervisor. I've got a lot of knowledge. I've really trained up in being a supervisor. That's separate than my general just continuing education. And my CEUs, they count towards my certification. I'm not losing it. I'm benefiting in every part of this. And so especially now, so I've been a legal interpreter for many, many years, taking lots of legal certification related CEUs, taking all the classes to maintain that. I specialize in something. If I wanted to provide supervision, I should specialize in that. So 10 hours, is that enough? At 4 years, 10 hours, that's like nothing. Well, the RID is 4 years, so it depends on which time cycle we're looking at. Was that 3 hours a year-ish? Does that mean I'm a specialist as a supervisor? For me, that seems insufficient. I mean, but again, we're not requiring for them to become a supervisor. We're not requiring that they have to supervise. If I want to be a supervisor, I can invest even more of my hours and experience in becoming a really great supervisor. I might do way more hours, but 10 over the course of 3 years, I don't think that's enough to become a supervisor. And again, they're not required to do that, but I want to clarify something that's maybe a mistake.
The generalist, are we not phasing out that generalist license of 3 years, then you just automatically move to the supervisory anymore? No, never mind. Yeah. That's the part I was missing.
Great, 20
Yes.
both pathways.
Well,
Continuing education for,
that's not what you did a few minutes ago, but I'm gonna go back over it. Darcy, you haven't wanted 10. You have been 1 and 2. Now it comes under one master stuff.
yes. But given that, I mean, I don't need one person to decide, this is a group effort, you know?
15.
The RAC is all of us, so. I think doing it the way you said, 2020 makes sense. Now they understand the overall picture. I think 2020 does make sense. 20 for pathway 1 as well, as long as it's fair. As long as, yeah, pathway 1 and pathway 2 are both requiring the same thing. And I think we could make everything 20 across the board. That would be really simple.
Christine, this is Christine. Off topic, but I noticed that the board is coming back together on December 18th
October 22nd.
for final rulemaking.
For final rules, it's December 18th.
Okay. And how many meetings are they scheduled between now and then? One in October and, okay. So what I heard you say is, or what I saw was, you know, we have to have it tidied up by that December 18th date, because it goes into effect in January. Okay. I'm just thinking, is there, we give them our proposals, they either accept or reject,
Or they can change.
or change. At any point, does it ever come back to us to rediscuss? No. So we can make the recommendations and they don't like it and they're gonna pick something to decide. Thank you.
It's Tina. I have a question. In pathway 1, the credential is 60 hours, correct? If you're credentialed in continuing education. Is that what, did you say that? That's how many?
This is Mel. So for me to hold my RID
Yes.
credential, it's actually 80 hours, but my cycle is 4 years. This cycle
Oh,
is
it's three.
is three.
3.
So we gave an
Okay.
extra 20 for the extra, we kind of did 20 per year in our mag grade men.
Okay. So it's still, you're doing more hours in pathway 1.
80. Because this is every 3 years.
And 4.
The 80 hours is every 4 years, yeah?
Yeah, but for here, we're following 60, but I know, and I'm gonna have to manage my own time for RID, I have 80.
Okay.
And that's on me to keep that different credential active. But they will carry over to here afterward.
I think what Tina is comparing is not pathway 1 to, what you do to hold your credential, but pathway 1 to pathway 2. So it looks like pathway 1, you get the 60 hours from having your credential, and then you have to also get 10 additional hours, which would be 70 hours. Or, whereas pathway 2 has 60 plus, and then the 20, the subsections are all subsumed within the 60. So if you want 60 hours under pathway 2, as well as 60 hours under pathway 1, then those 10 hours, or 20 hours of continuing education specific to supervision needs to be subsumed within the hours of the active credential. Is that what you're intending?
Correct.
I have it spelled out differently.
I'm gonna say that in my full voice. If I am keeping my RID credential active and I have my 80 hours in 4 years, I'm gonna take 20 hours of supervisory stuff because I want to double dip. I want to count for my credential and I want to count for HLO. And they will work in both areas. The timeline said they do not match up, but that is on the practitioner.
Do you want 60 hours on pathway 2? How many hours do you want there?
Pathway 2,
Give me a total number.
60 hours. And
How many you want for?
I is
supervising?
20, I is 20, I is 20.
You're sure?
Everyone is sure.
I feel like you're maybe missing something that you are all understanding that we're not.
I'm not sure.
Well,
So.
My
I'll bring it
halfway
better.
one, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Okay, so if the goal is under pathway one, that allows us to get 60 hours total, then we need to reword that 10 of the hours that you can, or sorry, 20.
Oh, I see where you're going.
20 of the hours in supervision are included, not in addition to the hours that you have for keeping your credential maintained. So we just need to reword that, because right now it sounds like you need to maintain your credential, and on top of that, you need to do 10 additional hours, whereas you're saying you want 60. So if that's the goal, just need to reword that.
Is that the goal?
This is Mel, so for pathway one, the active credential through the certifying body. You don't say 60 hours here.
Right,
It's just the credential, but within that credential, we want 20 hours to be supervision. It's within that. I think BEI is 50 hours. Is that where we got stuck? It's the BEI CE credentialing is 50 hours within every so many years. I think BEI was every 3 years. It's another 100%.
5 year research.
Every 5 years, so they have an even longer period of time.
Can you? Yeah.
If you haven't tried the credential.
And I think our goal was
Your
that
hours would, sorry, your hours would have to be done before those 4 years because you'd still have to keep, maybe you're still gonna self-attest that you have all of those hours at the time of renewal. So if your credential doesn't, you don't have to renew another year later, you still have to have it at the time you renew.
Right, but that's a surrender issue.
Not,
They can get it any time in the.
So an easy solution is get rid of the 3 years and maybe make our cycling 4 years for this. Because she's saying, no, can't do that. Because the law's already set, is what they're actually saying, so can't change it. It's already passed.
So this is Heather. You get rid of pathway one, and still whoever is maintaining their active credential automatically just have to split whatever or C continuing education hours that they get for their credential into the categories of pathway two. That would make it a lot easier.
This is Christie, but I think for pathway two, we didn't say they have to have that.
I would just get rid of all of it and just have continuing education. The hours that are needed.
And the people who want to keep that credential could
That's
use
their
whatever
own.
hours they get
For
under
their
pathway
credential.
two for their credential.
This is Christie. I feel like we just need to, well, I feel like we need to keep both pathways, but we need to be clearer in the language that says these can also count for this. You want to follow your shortest timeline. Right? ChatGPT will do a video chat for us.
I'm doing nothing, so I get the work. Okay. If this is how we got here last time, a lot of, we changed that, but you didn't really change it. So I don't want to make that mistake again.
This is Mel. think we use the language, if I look into the supervisory one, pathway 2. I 30 hours of continuing ed must be specific to professional studies related to sign language interpretation. Professional studies ties into like RID's language. But then more general, like just studies of sign language interpretation lends itself to the DEI wording. And so we're trying to connect them. Trying to figure out how we could do what Heather recommended potentially. Like we could just say, you know, to renew, you have to have 60 hours of continuing education. If you want to hold your supervisory license, of those 60 hours, 20 must be supervision. Yeah.
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 On that note, we're gonna switch. So again, I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a moment. So suppose somebody's really excited and motivated to apply for the supervisory license. And that person's like, no, actually, I don't want to do that anymore. I'll do it next time when I renew. So I'm gonna drop it for now. And then we have to take that continuing education hours or that training for the supervisory piece. So does that mean they drop down to a generalist license and we lose people from that pool? So I'm just thinking, you know, maybe next time they go to renew, thinking, you know, gosh, which category, positive, negative, for doing either one, we're gonna lose people potentially. And at the same time, pathway 1 and pathway 2 are pretty similar for the most part. This is Mel. I think what Heather's trying to say is, if you just look at the CEUs, the continuing education in general, so when you go to renew, you've already, you know, satisfied the requirements for the license, for your generalist. You would do the supervisory for the first time. When you go to renew, you should have 60 hours. Right, and these are the same, right? The pathways are the same. So you could say you have 60 hours. So if you're applying for the supervisory license, you have the 20 hours, and then the generalist, you have 30 hours. So specifically, something I don't remember what it is, but it's like 20 in ethics, and so it's divided out. So should we just have them both be the same, pathways be the same? This is Darcy. So if I'm understanding correctly, generalists, the rules there say when you renew your license, any of the licenses. So if you renew, you have these different categories that you have to satisfy. So you have 60 hours. Includes like ethics and professional studies and what was the other one? ML says if you are doing. So what is the rule now? How are things divided out now? How are the 60 hours
Well,
divided out?
RID,
You've got the 4 different licenses. And so I'm looking at this specific one, like how it's divided out and how it's going to impact.
so RID requires,
Right, so you have the general studies. How many hours of general studies?
how many
And how many hours
hours
of
of
ethics?
professional studies?
Sammy, you may have responses.
Well, I'm wondering if you can do something like that, and I think this is what Heather was saying, but I'm not positive. If you just kind of left out all the fluffy stuff and just said, maintain the supervisory license, a licensee must complete 60 hours of continuing education, and 20 hours must be specific to topics related to supervising sign language. Then they can do whatever they want with the other 40.
So that means 60 plus 20. So here, okay, so for this, for the pathway 1,
It wouldn't be halfway.
we did this.
So for all of them, okay. You just do it for all. This is not.
So under R&D, at least for me, to keep my certification, I have to have 20 hours of PPO, power, privilege, and oppression. That's a category. And then I have to have so many hours of professional studies.
Amber says, so that was 20 hours?
I think it says 2.0 or 1.0, maybe it's 1.0. 1.0 of PPOs.
So I'm sorry, the interpreter missed some of the back and forth. Amber, what were you saying? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. She said, Amber saying, I sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. So total, you have 8 professional studies. No, sorry. Total, you have 8. 6.0 is professional studies. And then PPO, you have 1.0 required. And then general studies says 2.0 is required. So that is a total of 8. And Mel,
10 is 80.
Huh?
I think it's times 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hours and hours.
Yeah, so now 6, 1, 2. So now since the BEI is the same, there might be a little bit of a difference, but if an interpreter is keeping their certification and maintaining that, then do we necessarily have to do the same thing and categorize everything? I don't think so, because they're already doing that through the other organization. An interpreter does not have to have an RID certification to get their license if there's this other pathway, because it says you do not need it. Do not need continuing education. What you recently just said, could you say that for general, the general license, generalist license, is that gonna be the same requirement? Because I think we want more specifics, because some people don't have formal interpreter training, or whatever. So I think that's why we wanted to separate those categories out, professional studies related to interpreting specifically. Because if you took a workshop about, knitting, you could say, hey, that's under general studies, right?
And you could keep those topics within just requiring 60 hours and not coupling it with having maintained a credential. And so whatever hours you take and get to renew your license, you could apply those elsewhere to whatever credentials you also have. But you could just say, obtain the 60 hours, within those 60 hours, 20 in ethics, 20 in supervising, 20 in whatever, but not have it coupled with credential.
This is Lori. I like that idea, and I think it's mostly because I think that once people have passed the test, why do we even care if they maintain their credential with organizations? That's up to them.
Yeah.
They've passed it, they've met the criteria, now we just need the hours. I would agree.
None of my programs attach their CEs to a credential. I mean, maybe some bands do, but none of mine. That's because it feels like you're requiring them with that current stay license. And
Right.
it's easy to say, we want you to have these number of hours, and here's the specific areas.
Yeah.
So you can like the 60 and then the 320s. You want to keep the 20 in supervision,
And then the credential requirement.
yeah, we would just take that out. We would have one pathway, and it would just be 60 hours of continuing education. And you could break it up into 20, 20, 20. You could say how I said it before, where it's 60 and 20 of it must be supervising.
so keep the active credential, this is Darcy, keep the active credential plus the statement that says something about the number of hours for specific. Right?
You leave the active credential.
That's what pathway two, so just keep pathway two.
Yes.
I was just saying, I think we should keep the active credentials. part.
Yeah, keep the active, it starts to keep active credentials.
And just want to throw out there too, this is Amber speaking, just looking over BEI and considering those stakeholders. They have a 5-year certification cycle. They are required to do 60 clock hours.
Yeah,
So
so
very different than RID's 4-year cycle, 80 hours.
so not attaching it to a credential makes it more even across whoever has, whatever.
So happy we don't have dialogue to look up information.
This is Christy. Someone succinctly tell me where we've landed now?
You have not, but I have two options for you. Well, I have three. First one is for supervisory, to maintain a SLI supervisory license. Licensee must complete 60 hours of continuing education, and 20 hours must be specific to topics related to supervising sign language interpreters. That's the first option. 60 hours, 20 of it's gotta be in supervision. Option two, to maintain the supervisory license, the licensee must complete 60 hours of continuing education. Of those hours, 20 must be in supervision, 20 must be in ethics, 20 must be in professional studies.
How about B?
And the other one would be add back in the active credential and have that and then one of register.
Like B or 2.
Jersey says, I think I'm voting for the option. Keeping the active credentials. Along with the, ethics, 20-hour clause. And how the people want to use the remaining of their hours is up to them.
Said you want to keep.
Yes, I want to keep the active credentials.
The reason you want to keep it.
I just feel that it would be helpful. General,
If the people already have it, and they.
right, I know, they have, but I don't know what they have, are they just not? Gosh, I think I need to figure out how exactly I want to say this.
Because really what you're proving is that they paid. Every 4 years, they've paid their license. That's what you're proving when you ask them to say they have an active credential.
Right, so if they don't have an active credential, that means they have to.
So what, they've already passed, right? So I don't care if they have an active credential.
All right, I need to think about that
Yeah.
more. Mel, just something's not quite right in my gut about this one. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I was like, yeah, you know what, you're right. Every interpreter knows that their credentials could lapse. It's like, oh, shoot, I was like, my credentials lapsed. I don't want it to lapse. So here in Oregon, we have to keep paying. So suppose you move to another state. Are they required to keep their active credentials there? Well, they have to take the test again. Because they let their certification lapse. So we have to take care of the interpreters are gonna mess up control of this.
We can barely get your license in Oregon. I don't want to be looking at it, but.
Yeah. Okay, I understand where you're going with that. So again, if we're all the same, we're all professionals, we want to build that profession and recognize that different credentials, different tests. So it's just a recognition of passing them.
They've already done that when they applied for the license.
Well,
But keep the standards high.
We don't wanna
We want to
Because
keep
you
that
stop
tracking.
paying for your license, that means your standards are now like lower.
Well, in America, that's the standard in America, and in other states, they do require RIT certification. Or one or the other, did you pass your test? And sometimes you don't, and if you don't keep paying RIT,
But we are requiring the hours of professional development.
here.
That's half of what RIT requires, right? The other half is paying the money. So why are we interested if they pay the money to RIT? That's my point. See what I mean?
Well, continuing best practice generally. And, you know, in the western states, you know, it seems like people don't care if you pay RIT or not. And I am kind of with you, Darcy, about saying, you know, if we keep this standard, it's important, and I want to be able to support that, and I don't want to have to jump down to pathway 2 and say, well, you know, if you do have that, it's fine, but I think people's motivation is gonna be to keep an active credential. And training, you know, and deaf people know that is going to mean something. If it's like, oh yeah, I don't have to have something for RIT.
That's the reason why people will keep the RIT certification.
Yeah, right,
Trust
exactly.
people.
So if you have to, in education, but it doesn't say anything about the active credential, then people can just be like, taking the class, sure, I'm an interpreter, I'm doing my thing. But do they have the skill to keep doing that? I mean, how else do we get those jobs? Right, so it's got these different tests. I mean, that's kind of a screening, a natural screening process. So kind of weighing those two. So I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, just kind of think things through. What I need more here. Amber? I agree with you guys, I agree with your comments. And I respect your perspective. I'm also thinking, like, for example, I'm trucking along, I'm a hearing interpreter, do my thing, and I take my test, certification test, and I get my paper, I pass. Good for me. So now, I'm like, all right. The license is requiring me to, I have to get these workshops for the licensing, and I'm like, you know what, I don't care about RIT anymore, I'm gonna let them know. So now, I'm a working professional interpreter. I'm out in the world. I can't legally say I'm a certified interpreter. That's the problem. Like what Mel, the point, I mean, I think she was trying to make is, you know, that people can be, hey, are you certified? And that's for the national standard, right? And so deaf people want their interpreters to be certified. It's like, I'm not really certified, but I passed the test. I mean, it just gets.
Well, they'll say that they're licensed, but you're right, they would have to say, no, I'm not certified. And that's what people to let their certifications lapse. It's stupid to do that.
I agree with you.
I'm just saying, as an HLO board, we are not, but as HLO representatives, sort of. Why are we interested in that? And they have to do that when they apply for their license the first time. So we have that information that they passed the test.
Hold on, the interpreters are gonna switch.
I'm not willing to die on this hill, but
Pause.
just, yeah.
So again, the deaf community is gonna ask, are you certified? Because certification means that you either take the BEI or the NIC or something through RIT. Any one of those certifications, you had that. So a license, now it's gonna be, are you licensed, are you certified? Or if you're not certified, you have your license, that's kind of like, whoa, hold on a second moment.
For sure, people need to, but I just don't think it's related to this, but again,
Good. I think that's setting up a loophole that I don't want to support personally.
loophole for what?
For people who want to not pay to be certified, to maintain their certification.
I get it, I get it.
And
But
most
for
people
me,
will do
it's
that.
like-
Most people will find you this certificate.
Get your certification. Maintain your certification. What does that have to do with license? Pass the test.
Can I? So trying to figure out which of these groups of people to give this license to, the supervisory or the generalist. Like gathering all the information, how are we going to support figuring out which of these 3 licenses are going to fit which individual? Of course, how are we going to know?
Having this requirement helps us figure out which of the different categories.
Making a requirement for which licensure, wait, let me back up, let me clarify. Okay. Will it help get these people licensed and working, being able to figure out which of these licenses am I qualified for? You know, original, generalist, whichever, and switching back and forth, whichever one they are going to apply for, to be able to prove and say, yes, I'm keeping my active credential with, let's say, 20 hours of workshop or whatever. Wherever it's coming from R&Ds, where it's connected with the specification of the supervisory license, that should just be a one-done check the box thing. And a person should be able to say, do I have this or don't I? Can I apply to this or can't I? Counting all the hours.
If I didn't have any supervision hours, then I don't get to have a supervisory license. I'm a generalist.
You can't just pop back in between them. One is supervisory, does have the generalist pathway, but you may not have come through that. So with it, there is a scenario where you could have been issued a generalist and got the supervisory. That could do, but I don't, but you don't necessarily, most people aren't coming that pathway. We already know that.
Some don't. But still, they need to take care of, we need to have pathways 1 and 2.
It's hard to find the right phrasing for this, but I agree, we want to keep the incentive to support our national certifying body. You know, you commented about the deaf community is familiar with that language. They know how to ask, are you a certified interpreter? That means something in our field. And so, and yes, I get what you're saying. It's stupid if someone lets their certification lapse. Yes, and some people are stupid. So we don't want to enable it. So what you're saying, if we're saying that you can just take the 20 hours of the supervisory trainings for continuing education and get your RID transcript, hand that in, then it's kind of built into the system that we are supporting the RID system. They're working in tandem. The 2 systems work together, the license and the certification. So if we have the transcript and it says it there, you know, I don't think it hurts anything to keep the active credential language in there, but it is more beneficial to keep it in there because that's something important to her.
Okay, yeah. Just the only thing for me is like, I have one interpreter right now who's really financially struggling, right? And she can't afford this licensure right now. Not even including RID licensures. So I'm thinking, okay, we have people like that who might have an RID certification, they can afford that, or they can afford licensure. Which were they gonna pick? They're gonna pick the one that will allow them to work with the licensure.
And then that's pathway 2 though. That's pathway 2. Pathway 2, it doesn't say anything about requiring a credential.
Right.
My understanding, maybe I'm wrong, but that's.
Let's bring it back to where we were before. So we're gonna keep it exactly how it was, but we're gonna change pathway 1 to 20 hours. That's right. So, and then the other pathway 2 will be 20, 20, 20. That was a hearing correct. Active credential, 20 hours of supervising. Pathway 2, 60 hours, 20 of supervising, 20 of that, 20 of professional studies.
Yes, but I think the 20 for pathway 1 needs to be clear that it's included in the credential.
Yes.
hours. It's not an addition, it's not additional.
It's gonna be a problem because it's.
Okay.
I can't do this, Chris.
Okay, you were saying 20 hours of supervision, which is also part of the 80-hour requirement or part of required from whichever certification you have, whether it's PEI, is that 50 hours? Whichever, they're not exactly the same, but, either the 80-hour requirement of part of the year. Some kind of phrase in there. Sorry, I interrupted. I think we were on the same page though.
Okay, I'm gonna go back again. Other one, active credential, holds an active credential that's been maintained through the credentialing organization and 20 hours of continuing education within the active credential. This is gonna be perfect. It's the rule specific to supervising interpreter, including the renewal cycles. Go to 60 hours, 20 in supervising, 20 in ethics, 20 in professional studies. That, okay.
Well,
Are you sure?
No,
We'll write it up and we'll look at it next time.
maybe don't show it to us again. If you don't show it to us again, then we'll just have to be.
No. Okay. We can go to general, we've got about 6 minutes. Which general is the same 60 hours for the divvy that different. Use this one could be.
Professional study.
Do the 60 hour and of the 60 hours, maybe just do whatever you want ethics to be.
Do whatever you want, what?
Ethics.
Ethics for all categories in those 20 hours? 2 years, how do you feel about that? As if it was 20 hours for supervision. Generalized. So who do you guys?
You want 60 hours for the generalist, and it's broken up into 10 and 50. But I didn't reference the active credential, which you could have in this situation.
R&D's requirement of 80.
Sixty hours.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
60 hours.
To see you, it's just there's
There's lots
so
of
many
people-
people talking
There's
at
lots of
once,
people
so I'm
talking at the
trying
same
to
time.
track who's talking.
Go ahead, Amber.
8 total. Professional studies is 60 hours. From that, it's the PPO, which is the power, privilege, and oppression. And that's 10 hours, 10 hours. Whatever you want to put into general studies to equate to 80 hours. So it's 6, 1, and 8, and then general is just whatever you want to put into that. It's not like a requirement to have general studies for RIT.
What was the second one for again?
And that was 10 hours.
PPO is 10-hour requirement. That's something we. That's right.
Six.
Don't back to those words.
I might.
It's required for certification, right?
Yes.
Then if you already have the certification because we kept pathway one, you know they've already had it.
But pathway for licensing.
Right.
Gotta keep it in licensing order.
Right.
Which ethics does that, for sure. Yeah.
Because BEF doesn't.
Like,
Especially in whitest states in the US, like that's something that we should consider putting in as a requirement. Not thinking about EI, not thinking about RID, I'm thinking about Oregon State or our state, who we want to represent. Who do we want to be and show to the people that we value this? The PPO is important. I'm not talking about all these organizations. I feel like maybe that's something we as a state can show that we actually like care about that. Should live from the children. I know, I'm not interested right now.
you guys are not, and you can save the world. And again, you guys are not gonna save the world in the next 7 years. I hate to hear very much. But we gotta start landing on some firmer language. Because we've got 7 of these to go. And, I mean, I really hope, that's all I'm gonna say.
We're supposed to be doing public comment.
It's 1:30.
Oh, yeah, we're doing not public comment yet, that's gonna be 2, so 1:45. We're gonna look at meeting dates, which we're going to have. One. So. I'm gonna leave general, it's just how it is, I'm not gonna change anything on it for the CEUs. So 16th, September 16th and 17th. You're gonna have them, but she didn't even touch me like you did. Yeah, 3 of them. All of them.
Same.
I'm just being honest.
No.
Oh, I have.
No, that week, the Portland Community College is in service week. And so I can do one day, but I wouldn't be able to do both. And I prefer the 16th. Secret conversation happening. And then Darcy saying, yeah, that would be better for me as well. Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, meetings that I have to show up to.
Which one?
Thursday, Friday.
I had a forum for both days, so they're happening. Whether you can show up, I don't know.
What dates are we talking about?
So 16th and the 17th.
I'm not available on the 16th, but I am available on the 17th.
Because everybody wanted an updated their dates.
I didn't update my dates as now.
She said, what about virtually?
Mel, I have you coming to both of them. Which one can you come to? Both.
17. Can't do the 17th. Why can't I do the 17th? I don't remember what it is.
Well, we'll resend this out, but plan to attend if you can.
This is Christie. I filled out and Lori filled out, then we connected to make sure that at least one of us was here. So I could do the 16th and Lori could do the 17th.
Yep.
And I can do the 16th until noon. If needed virtually.
Then I'll Josh send this back out and you guys an update on it. Okay. And I know like have the new thing. Yeah, we're gonna have to. Because we're gonna have to save all the October dates for everything sent implemented.
I think we're gonna need all of it.
Yeah.
Is there
Darcy, I can do the 17th
evening meetings for this?
after 12:30, 12:30 on.
But there's,
Yeah, virtually. So just Darcy, I can join 12:30 on virtually for the 17th. The 16th, I'm a maybe, but I'm not sure because there's a meeting that I might not have to go to, and if not, I can show up for half of the day on the 16th. It'll also be virtually for me on the 16th.
Well, I'll have Josh send this back out, so update what you can do, because some of you can attend both, but now it sounds like you can't. But we'll just keep resending it out to make sure it's updated. It's the same link every time, so. Yeah, so we'll plan to do it, and if something happens, if we can't get a quorum, then we'll be in touch. Otherwise, we'll see you on the 16th. What else do we have? So the next meeting, we'll go back over continuing education. We'll probably look at education, the license again, possibly. Revisit renewal, hopefully we can get those buttoned up and signature buttoned up, and then move on to the license. Supervisory and general. As member provisional, you guys are talking about changing the IPA from 3.5 to 3.7 or 4.0. And if you do that, then you have to change the generalist and the supervisory EIPA, so be thinking about that. Otherwise, if you could do if you did 3.7,
Yeah.
then you could leave the other two.
Right.
Yeah. That would be the easiest.
I was distracted.
We talked about 3.8. We should be fine, right? Then 4.0 for generalists.
No, but change your mind, 3.8.
Well, I would both.
Either one, I'm fine with 3.7, 3.8.
Is that a provisional?
Change it to that.
Changing it to that,
Not keeping 3.5.
we're not going to keep 3.5.
We've had a secret discussion about it.
No,
we didn't.
I'm
kidding.
We were here.
Last.
I know, okay.
We negotiated it.
Refresh that.
No.
And the last session, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'll go through it again. The Oregon Department of Ed has said they're looking towards HLO to raise the standard for educational interpreters. And when you change the framework, that provisional interpreters are now the ones providing educational interpreting. That put the onus back on the RAC and the board to up the qualifications for educational interpreters. That's the kind of way we can do it. And for the first step, we're gonna do 3.7. And then whenever we can come back to the table, hopefully over time, we'll raise it to 4.0, something like that, because that's 10 years for a deaf child in a rural area to have the same interpreter after 3.5. We're trying to up the qualifications there too. So,
And, this is Lori, and existing educational interpreters will have until January 1, 2029 to have that 3.7. And then they will have an additional 9 years to have 4.0.
Or they could be in training license, have that for as long as they guys decide.
don't resuscitate me.
This guy could be going on for a long time.
The longest training period ever.
Is there any public on the phone? On the call, Josh? Is
What was that?
there any public on the call?
No, not outside of Georgina. She's in.
Staff.
Here.
Yeah. Who's Josh? Oh, come on. Now that I said it, 1:45, I will be coming. I'm putting time.
Like, open the can of worms again?
Go ahead.
We have, what time is it now? We have 5 minutes, 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. This is Amber, sorry. Also, I wanted to ask, do we have anything written into a rule or a law or whatever preventing licensees from downgrading their license? Like if you're a generalist, you've been acting as a generalist for however long, and something happens where you're no longer certified, or if you're provisional and you want to go down to training, like, is there anything preventing anybody from doing that? Are there like safeguards in place for that?
This is Christy, my question would be, why do we care? If they want to get a provisional because of, for whatever reason, it only limits them and their ability to do specific work outside of education. And in education, they can work there. And why would it matter?
They can't, this is Heather, they can't really bump down, they have to apply for a different license and then they give that to the license. But they would automatically get a license of a different quality.
Just money. Just money.
I did look it up, and to your point about not requiring certification or credentials, as we were saying before, $220 to re-up my membership this year. $220 for your person that you're. I empathize, I do. Lori, this is where I want to clarify something I thought I was hearing. You and Mel had said something about stepping from a 3.7 and then a 4.0. What were the thoughts in terms of when the 3.7 returned to the 4.0?
At the generalist level.
At the generalist level or at the provisional?
Generalist would be 4.0. Which is, I think, currently what we have.
Yeah. But was there a time when you were gonna raise the provisional to the 4.0 at some point?
I think we had talked about that like down the road later when rules changed.
This is Christy, I'm thinking after the folks that had their initial permanent license until 26, good till
2029.
29, and then they're good for 9 more years, 38. So
They're only good for 6 years. If they if they have an extended license. Well, no. Because, okay, what type of license are we talking about?
provisional, they get their initial, and they can renew, and renew. So initial's 3, 6, 9. Actually, I guess if you already have it, then you are at 7 years, not 9.
So some interpreters, it'll take less than 9 years though. So, some people might get it within a year. Maybe they had their provisional, they got it a year ago or 2 years ago, it's gonna impact them. But, they might not need the full 9 years. It might take 4 years, it might take
This is
5 years.
Chrissy, so we either need to apply it to everyone who has their licenses. Or we do for those who held their license by 12/31/25. Then by this date, you would need to have a 3.7, and for all new issued licenses after January 1st, 2026 beyond, they would start with a 3.7.
Are you talking about people already holding provisional? Having to go back and get 3.7? They've already qualified with 3.5?
I'm not understanding you, you're not very answering.
Are you saying that people who currently hold the provisional who qualified with 3.5 would have to come back and prove that they passed with 3.7?
No, not until they go to apply for their next provisional, generalist.
But it wouldn't be required because the general license already has the 4.0 requirement.
Oh,
Right.
right, okay. It would be when they apply for their provisional.
License, they would need to have a 3.7.
So then that means 2029.
When they're applying in 2026.
So you're thinking a renewal?
Hold on,
Everybody's tired. Yeah. Because you guys are blown away. I'm gonna write all that down. But we're gonna do public comment. Okay. At this time, the Board of Finance Interpreters, Rules Advisory Committee will hear public and interested parties' feedback. Public comment limited to matters listed on the meeting agenda or topics relevant to what the committee has statutory authority to regulate. Comment will be limited to 3 minutes and will not be allowed if they are disruptive to the committee's conduct of business. If you are called on to comment, HLO staff will request that the member remove themselves. The HLO reserves the right to end the person's comment early and have HLO staff mute the public member if the comment is not pertaining to matters listed on the meeting agenda or topics relevant to what the committee has statutory authority to regulate. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? If so, please raise your hand on Zoom. Hearing nothing, this committee is adjourned at 1:46 p.m.